Now, here we go.
And you just lead on whatever you want me to say, talk about.
Sounds good. Hey
And if you have
guys,
chat
hopefully,
going, tell
yeah,
me.
you
I
should.
can't see your chat.
You can't see it. The link that I
Well, I mean,
sent
I
you.
could go on to the YouTube, but then I'm going to have two sources. Let me try that. You go ahead and introduce.
No, but I sent the link to you. That should come in with a chat, but I don't know how it works. Hey guys, what's up? Anyway, we're starting out. Let me know in the comments if you guys could hear me, see me. I got Mark from DevMentorLive. I think we're going to have an awesome conversation. He has helped me a lot on my coding journey. I took some classes with him. If you're able to do so, I highly recommend it. You could check him out at his YouTube channel, DevMentorLive. Here, I'm going to quickly screen share this baby here. So you could go to his YouTube here. He's got a lot of great videos. By the way, he has a good catalog of a lot of videos. So even if you're like, man, I can't afford to pay for mentoring lesson, if you just watch his channel and you're serious about your learning, you're definitely going to get a lot of benefit from it. But there's still the best way, in my opinion, if you're looking to learn, is doing one-on-ones. And if you're able to do so, I highly recommend it. But here I am. Mark, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show and chatting with us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I really wanted to have you on because my journey's been like up and down learning to code. And one of the biggest things and time wasters for me for a long time that probably cost me getting my job earlier, probably cost me, making money in the field earlier, was the fact that I was spinning my wheels, moving around because I wasn't sure what to learn. And it was not until I found somebody, that I could ask questions like a mentor that kind of was able to help me go on the right path. So from your experience, like why would someone need a mentor and how could it help them?
Well, let me take a quick step back and explain where I came from because I'm a self taught developer too, but from a different generation. So when I was a teenager, I grew up in the United States illegally. I was born in Mexico, but I grew up in the U.S. without like a social security number and stuff, and had kind of a rough home life. And so at one point, I just left home, and there wasn't really any safe place to be in Los Angeles when you lived on the streets as a
Oh
teenager. It was
man.
all drugs and parties and gangs and other stuff. So I retreated to the library. It was the one place where like they wouldn't kick you out, and if it was raining, shine, whatever, like you could be there in the air conditioning, and you were surrounded by an infinite amount of knowledge. And they had computers, and this is before Google. This is when people use like Mosaic browsers and shit. So I got hooked on this thing called a MUD, which is like a black screen with text. And as you type north, you go one step north into another room and you get another screen of text. And maybe there's like some monsters or other people in there. And it was a multi-user dungeon. That's what MUD stands for. So there's other people on the network in the same game as you, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. And I got completely addicted to it. So I started digging out the C books off the shelves to try to figure out how the hell did they create this thing. And then I was hooked. Like programming was everything to me. Partially because I didn't have anything else better to do. I wasn't going to school. Ninth grade was the last year I think I successfully finished. So in my day, there was really no internet. There were no tutorials. There was books. They were dusty. They were written by Russians and Germans and Americans and people from university. Really, there was not a lot of books that were written. In fact, I don't think there's any books written by like people in the industry writing code. It was all theoretical kind of stuff. And I came across things like the KNR Bible, which is the Kearney Ritchie C people that made C, and eventually like Unix and all these other tools. And then I found HTML, which is way easier than C. And back then they had like Angel Fire and GeoCities where you could build these really horrible websites with like starry backgrounds and rainbow text and shit scrolling across the screen. But to me, it was magic. And so I just kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And there was, like I said, there's no Udemy, there was no YouTube, there was no
Right.
nothing. So the books that you're reading weren't really helpful because they were like 20 years old and they were for a totally different environment that doesn't exist. And nothing about web. And then people started doing tutorials on Angel Fire and GeoCities about here's how you do HTML. Here's how you make your site look horrible with crazy starry backgrounds using CSS. And then JavaScript happened, and people were building like shopping carts out of cookies. Like you just string a giant string together that is their shopping cart, stick it in a cookie, and send somebody to an order page at the end where they literally just called the number and gave their credit card over the phone.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, so that was where I got my start, and then I got into the industry like right at 18, no college, no high school degree, just because I could go into a place and speak this new language that nobody could speak at, which is web development, and show them my instead of having like a paper resume, I just had like a CD that actually had a small website on the CD that was my resume. So that's kind of like, don't have your business card in an old school format that doesn't serve your purpose. Have a business card in the format of what you're trying to do, so you can also show off your skills at the same time. And I got hired and fired from a lot of jobs in the beginning because I wasn't very good and I didn't really have the experience that I needed. Everybody knew they wanted programmers, but nobody really knew, are you a junior web developer? Are you a mid-level? Are you a senior? What does that even mean? And then you get hired because you're a good programmer, but you're not a good fit because if you're like me and you're from the streets as a kid, you're smoking a lot of weed and doing stupid shit. So like I could go to work at Intel, but I could also quickly get fired from Intel because I'd failed a drug test or something. So there was this whole dichotomy that's pulling on me where like I was talented for the space, but I didn't really have the emotional maturity, or for that matter, just maturity in general. And I didn't really fit the culture. And then I found startups. And in startups, they didn't care. Half the time you were selling weed to the CEO. Like it was all about just getting shit done, getting things done. So there was a lot less getting fired for non-programming stuff, but there was still a lot of getting fired because you just made a stupid mistake. You took down all the SQL servers because you didn't really know what you're doing. And your boss is like, hey, I need you to back up this SQL server. And so you're looking up tutorials. This is where it gets back to the tutorials. You're looking up tutorials about how do I migrate this production SQL server with, 500,000 customer data, and it doesn't work. And you corrupt the database, and boom, you're going home and telling your new wife that you got fired. Yeah. So that told me really early on, if all you have are tutorials, obviously you do the tutorials, but you can't trust them because the people who are writing these tutorials are people that aren't swamped with job offers. If they were, then they would be making money not writing tutorials for free. So there was a lot of that. It was a lot of cobbling stuff together. And then Barnes & Noble became big, and programming books became big, and Rocks Press became big. But I didn't have the money for any of that stuff. So I would buy like one $50 book, and I would consume it and consume it and consume it. And then I would take it back to Barnes & Noble and get Start Credit and get another programming book and consume it, and just keep kind of going through that. And I made like a $200 book budget last me for basically 2 years. And again, back to the jobs, like more hiring, more firing. I found out the best way to get a pay increase, don't stay at the same company, get a different job. It's so much easier to double your income going to a different job than it is to try to convince your current boss that you need even $10 more an hour. So I went from like $10 an hour to $15 an hour to $25 to $50 to $60, all within like the first 3 years of my job life.
Yeah. So
that kind of brings me to where I became professional.
Yeah. And so going from like the mean streets of LA, and I mean, knowing how old you are, doing the math backwards, those were rough times. And then getting off the streets and then being able to start this career as a developer, it's amazing. So the fact is that anybody could do it. But this idea, like I was coming to, I ended up spinning my wheels a lot. And if you look at my Udemy library, I honestly spend over like $2,000 on Udemy, like just because the addiction of buying courses is so retarded that people just buy courses one after the other.
What are the price ranges of the courses that you've been buying?
All of them were like $10-12. There's one course where, and then there's one good course I bought, which was like $300. And I'm a big believer in spending money for education, but not all education is equal. And one of the things that helped me a lot is having resources of actual people that I could talk to, and actually asking questions. Because before I went down the React path, I was learning so many different things, and basically I ended up knowing a lot about nothing. You know what I mean? Yep. Because I didn't really have someone who was there to point me in the right direction, be like, hey, don't make this mistake, don't do this. And this coming back to this idea of having a mentor and being able to kind of have someone to ask questions to is very important. And the truth that I know about a lot of these tutorials, maybe like 1% of people succeeds. Like, the reason why I was able to get a job as a developer is because I never stopped, never quit. But the number of failures I had was insane. And anybody who's making it on YouTube or whatever they're doing is because they have this persistence. And then I find that a lot of people online, they just get caught up in this hype, and they get caught up in the tutorial hell, and they feel that they don't have the confidence to build something on their own, so they keep doing tutorials, not realizing that at a certain point, you're just repeating first grade all over again. I could say it clearly because all the Udemy courses that I have,
like first grade in a really poor school.
Right.
Let me
to be honest, I did take some good tutorials on Udemy. I'm just gonna say they're not all bad.
Listen, I've been mentoring people professionally for like 4 years now, and I hear the same thing over and over about Udemy. It's not that Udemy is a good platform or a bad platform. The price that you spend on the things that you own, if you buy a bunch of cheap crap for your apartment, it's going to fall apart in a year, and you're not really going to care about it, and you're not going to take care of it because it was cheap. And so in your own mind, it's devalued. And if you go out and you go to Udemy and you buy a whole bunch of cheap courses, you are very unlikely to finish any of those courses because you didn't have enough of investment in that thing to even feel like it's worth finishing. You bought it for $10, so who cares if you only did 10% of it, right?
Yeah, let me pull out this comment for a second. Sorry. Dennis Ivy here. I went from a good paying job making tutorials. I guess I did things backwards. So here's the thing, you found your passion, you found your calling, and there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from your tutorials. But I know why you're successful, Dennis Ivy, and it's not because from the tutorials you do, but because from your entrepreneurial mindset and your hustle. You're going to be successful no matter what you do, and that's a fact that I don't want people to ever forget. So there's nothing wrong making tutorials, but people have to understand the fact that I take tutorials is not going to make me successful. It's the mindset that someone like Dennis shares, someone like DevMentor shares, something that I share. That's what's going to get you that extra mile and get you that job that you want to go. And so if you like me who has like 400 tutorials, at some point you have to understand, wait a second, maybe it's not the goddamn tutorials I'm taking, but maybe it's because there's something that I'm not doing or a key part that I'm missing. And a lot of people, they don't know what that is, and so they never make it past that tutorial hell, as they call it. And for me, that's why I brought you on the show, is because I want to explain to people, if you don't have a role model that is able to tell you this is not right, this is right, you have to go into this direction, they're never going to be able to get out, because I wouldn't be able to get out if I didn't have that person. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, Marcus, because you're that, like, anybody who does mentoring is hard to scale. That's one bad thing about mentoring. You can't scale it as a business, but someone who's serious making a transition, they need someone that they could talk to. And that's why mentoring is expensive, because you can't scale it. I totally get that. But you do need that direction where you're not spinning your wheels, because I wasted 4 years learning, and no one's fault except the fact that I felt like I needed to do tutorials. And then I realized after a bajillion tutorials, I was still at the same place. And I literally had to step out of my comfort zone and go after it. And having someone to give me that direction was good. So that's kind of
how many programming heroes
can
you name?
Programming heroes?
Yeah.
Bob Martin.
Okay, Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob, that other guy, I keep forgetting his name, that you actually recommended. He's kind of got hair on the sides, very smart dude.
Kevin Henley.
Yeah, that guy's fantastic.
Yeah, Kevin's really good. My advice for people, as far as like developing your own barometer on what good code and bad code is, don't focus on the language. Like, for instance, Uncle Bob is a Java guy. I fucking hate Java. But
yeah, I don't like Java either.
I don't listen to Uncle Bob because I like Java. I listen to Uncle Bob because he has so many years in the trenches, and he was involved in every major software movement from the 80s onward. And so he's plugged into the pulse of that generation. And you got to learn from the older generations. You can't just learn from your own generation, or you'll be missing the history. Without the history, you're just going to do the same stupid shit over and over. So my advice is find your heroes. Uncle Bob is good because he doesn't start off teaching you a tutorial. He doesn't start off talking to you about professionalism. He'll start talking about like how he was a nuclear physicist before he's a programmer, and why
Right.
quality matters. Because if you don't have quality in nuclear physics, people fucking die. And so then he
Yeah.
translates it there, or he starts off on some story about Margaret Hamilton and NASA building test-driven development on the original Apollo missions, and then he finally gets around to doing what he does. So Bob is good because he's very good at speaking. He's very good at weaving a story, and he never teaches you Java. What he teaches you are good programming practices. Some of them work better in Java than other things, but in general, they work. Like, for instance, the solid principles. Most of those even apply to functional programming, JavaScript, React, etc.
Yeah.
So just some things that you guys can do without paying for tutorials. Scour YouTube for Uncle Bob Martin, Kevlin Henney, Rich Hickey, the guy that invented Clojure, which is a style of Lisp. Who else? Martin Fowler, Obi, shit, what's Obi's last name? Hernandez or something. Find programmers that speak at conferences. All the conferences are available online now. And find the ones that speak to you that you don't want to fall asleep while you're watching, and then just watch a whole bunch of their videos. They might be talking about Clojure. They might be talking about things that are not related directly to you and say React and JavaScript. But you can implement these general programming habits for writing cleaner code in your JavaScript, and everybody around you will thank you for it, because JavaScript programmers tend to write some pretty terrible code.
Because you could write whatever you want, basically, with JavaScript.
It's so unstructured as a language. It's the perfect libertarian programming language. It's up to you to set your own rules.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they had to make TypeScript to give some people, some typing, so they could figure out what to do. Unfortunately, I had to start learning TypeScript for one of the jobs that I might be able to get, because they use it on their front end and their back end.
Yeah, I never say don't learn a language because it sucks, or don't do a technology because it sucks. Like, for instance, I'm very anti-Redux. It's a bad pattern. It's essentially global state. It's essentially global variables. We've known for 40 years global variables are not the answer. You end up with this giant state that has all this state in this dictionary key that travels around your website for forms that are no longer in the page, things that they're not even in front of you. So why are you carrying around that 3 megabytes of state? But you don't know that unless you actually learn Redux, and unless you start putting Redux into large sites, and then you start seeing the flaws of the Redux pattern and all the damn boilerplate that you have to write, and all the actions and the reducers and constants to name your actions so you don't have typos, and then it's just rule on top of rule on top of rule. But you still have to learn it to A, get jobs, and B, come to the place where you can know it good enough to know that it sucks. Same thing with TypeScript. TypeScript is a solution looking for a problem. But I don't recommend that you ignore it and don't learn it.
Right.
Because until you're a good dynamic programmer anyway, TypeScript isn't going to... It might make you cry a little bit about the amount of code bloat that you get from all of the C# stuff that's jammed into it. But you won't miss the dynamic programming that they take from you until you become a good dynamic programmer anyway, right? So I do a lot of functional programming, a lot of dynamic programming. You can't pre-typecast this stuff. I work in a thing called duck typing. I don't care if it's physically an int 32, an int 64, or even a float. What I care is, can you do math functions on it? I don't care if something is an array, or if it's a set, or if it's some other form of collection. What I care about is, can you map over it? Can you filter over it? Can you reduce over it? So this is called coding to the interface. TypeScript takes all that away from you. It's kind of like bowling, and they put bumpers in the gutters. You're never going to get a gutter ball, but you're also never going to become a master JavaScript programmer if you just jump straight to TypeScript. But hey, you still got to learn TypeScript, because that's still the thing that's dividing our community and stealing half of our programmers. Which means it's stealing half of the jobs.
Yeah, and it's insane because someone decided that that's a better option in React, and a lot of React developers now using TypeScript, React, and TypeScript. But so at the end of the day, this is what I was going to say. Like, in terms of like tutorials and everything else, there is no easy way to become a developer, and at some point, you just have to be good at programming, and that's a journey that is not right. It is being a problem solver, and it's at the end of the day, you have to know the skill. Like you really have to know what you're doing. And then like, it doesn't matter if you buy this tutorial or that tutorial. Like at the end of the day, if you can't do the job that you're getting hired for, you're not going to get like hired. And the biggest issue is that a lot of people, like I said before, get stuck at tutorials. They don't know which step to take, not realizing that the best way to learn is to build stuff and fail and learn from it. But coming back to this idea, mentoring, is that everybody I talk to, and I see it now, it's like somebody will like talk to me, and I got my job with JavaScript and React, and I tell people it's still probably the easiest way to land a job. And then they'll watch, right, and they'll watch something else, and they're like, no, it's got to be this thing, or it's got to be that thing, or it's got to be like Shopify development themes, whatever. And then they spread themselves thin, and then 4 or 5 months goes by, and they didn't get anywhere. Like I have this chick that,
and by the way, you can make a fortune making Shopify themes and still be a shitty programmer. So in the end, you have to figure out: do you want to become a really professional, polished programmer, or do you want to make a lot of money? Because a lot of the best programmers die poor, and a lot of really crappy programmers make a lot of money because they're focused on revenue, not on proficiency. And but there's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever you decide is right for you.
And I think, like, let's say if you decide to do Shopify development, and you become really good at it, and that's what you stand out. Yeah, exactly. But don't go jumping back and forth. That's my point. No. But unless people have a person to tell them, like, hey, stop doing that. It's like everybody's right until they're, but they're wrong because they think the next shiny object that they find is going to be their silver bullet to get the job that they want. So like it's the
same reason people do NPM install everything, because they're just constantly diverted by the shiny new thing. And so they see how many shiny new things they can put into their program. And it could just be like, what's up with ES 2021? What new features are they jamming down our throats in the JavaScript spec this month? There's nobody. Kevin Henley says this. Actually, I think it might be Douglas Crockford. Douglas Crockford's also a really good person to listen to when it comes to JavaScript. Nobody's standing there with a clipboard saying, do you know Svelte? Do you know Vue? Do you know Angular? Do you know React? Because there's no company that's using all those technologies. They're using one of those technologies. And there's nobody that's standing over your shoulder with a clipboard going, okay, is he using sets in JavaScript? Okay, did he write his own generators, or does he use the special ES6 syntax? Is he using promises? Is he using async await? What is he like checking off? Are you using every feature? The fact is, 70% of JavaScript is crap. It's just garbage that was shoved into the spec by Microsoft, who are not JavaScript people. They've hated JavaScript from day one. Java, who are not JavaScript people, they've hated JavaScript from day one. And these are the people that are in control of that language, right? So you can't focus on learning all the things and using all the things. You have to narrow your focus down to what is going to give you your goals. If your goal is to get hired, my advice is look for what the #1 programming language is today for jobs. It's not TypeScript yet. TypeScript is definitely better than, say, PHP. It's JavaScript. So now you know JavaScript is the thing that has the biggest market share. Okay, well, what front-end framework has the biggest market share? There's research. It's very simple to find these answers. It's React. So then you go down the React path. You don't keep getting distracted by Firebase and Svelte and all the other 1,000 technologies that you'll find on YouTube channels. Like Fireship is a really great channel for just like finding out 100 seconds of Mongo and 100 seconds of this and 100 seconds of that. But that is the exact thing that people do, where they chase the shiny thing, the shiny new thing, and they have this really wide grasp of knowledge of nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Master of or the person that knows everything, but they're a master of nothing, like a bard. Like that's not how you get a job. You need to have a narrow focus, and your narrow focus should be based on your goals. And then you should use research to back up that narrow focus so that you're learning the right things. And when it gets hard, don't just jump to the next thing. Of course it's going to get hard. That's why we make good money as programmers, because this shit is hard. If the garbage guy down the street could do it, he wouldn't be throwing garbage in the garbage can. He'd be programming too. Truck drivers quit their careers because they find out they're actually really, really smart, and they go into programming, and some of them end up going right back into truck driving because they can make more money doing trucking. Yeah, it's definitely like one of the things about coding. It's
like some people like, oh,
Hard.
you could learn in 3 months, you could make $150,000, whatever. It's ridiculous because
That's the other thing. This
it's so
industry
hard.
lies through its
Fucking
teeth.
crazy,
Never believe anything a recruiter says.
crazy,
Never
crazy.
believe anything a boot
Yeah.
camp says. They all tell everybody the same thing. You go through our boot camp program. It's going to be hard. It's going to be grueling. You're going to have to do 10 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 months. You're going to have to pay us $50,000, but you'll have to pay us $50,000 more once you get hired over the next 2 years, blah, blah, blah. But 80% of the people that graduate from our program, their first job is at 6 figures. Fuck that. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it took me 15 years to break 6 figures, and it took me working for myself to break 6 figures, not getting, because if you want 6 figures, you got to move to San Francisco. You got to work for Facebook. Okay, well, who wants to live in San Francisco? The streets are covered in shit. It's crowded. There's needles all over. It's a progressive wasteland. And getting a job at Facebook is not easy. If you, sorry for the quick side trip into identity politics, but if you have the right color of skin, the right backward, the right oppression education, the right blah, 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 you can know next to nothing and get a 6-figure job at Facebook.
Yep.
But if you're not in that category of categories, i.e. if you're just like, you know, a normal dude, and I'm not being sexist here, most programmers are dudes, you're at the bottom of every single hiring list. You're not going to get out of a boot camp and make 6 figures as your first job working for Facebook in San Francisco. Yep. It's just not going to happen for you.
Yeah. There's one boot camp I know, like, and they say straight up, you're going to make maybe 45, 50 to start. And that's if you know what you're doing.
That's
and
even a little bit
people.
High.
And they vet people like really crazy.
You get a job in Ohio working for a good, solid blue chip company, but they're in Ohio where the cost of living is really low. You're probably not going to make $45,000 as a
right.
program.
My first job was like shit. It's like basically what I made at the supermarket when I worked there. But the experience,
it's better to make supermarket money programming than it is to make supermarket money
work at the supermarket
stocking shelves.
Yeah, and that's the reality I want people to face. Like, if you're learning to code, like, hey, wake up, you know, shake your dream off and understand you're going to have to hustle, you're going to have to work, and failure is a big part of it. Like, you were talked at the beginning of how many jobs you had that you got fired from, and then you got hired again, and just a normal path. But people have to apply
Which is not a bad
themselves.
thing, because you get really good at getting jobs.
Yes, 100%. That's how you get practice. Practice. So, kind of like back in the first question, like, if you would recommend something, like if you were to do a list starting from HTML, CSS, what could someone start to learn today to get a job in the next year or two or so?
If you're going to be a web developer, the simple path is, it's very simple. Let's do JavaScript, React, right? You don't need to learn HTML in isolation. You don't need to learn CSS in isolation. Learning is not a linear thing. So you don't need to first learn HTML, then learn CSS, then learn JavaScript, then learn React. Just start learning React. In the process of learning React, you're going to learn JavaScript. You're going to probably learn a lot of bad JavaScript, but that's okay. Until you know that it's bad JavaScript, you don't really have your own barometer to know how to only write the good stuff, right? So you write the bad stuff for a while. Then you need to find whether you're paying for a mentor or whether there's somebody that's more senior than you at your job, and you say, hey, look, what I always did when I worked at places, because I was always the youngest guy coming like directly, like literally off the street, no education, nothing, working with kids that had been through university for 4 years and I didn't finish high school. I was always the youngest kid in the office, always. So I would always make friends with the guys that were in their 40s and their 50s and try to learn from them, because let's face it, you can build an app today by just like pointing and clicking. I mean, it's going to be a garbage app, but you can do it. Think of when Steve Wozniak was building the Apple I. There was no point and click for him. He didn't fucking have a mouse then. I mean, like, he had to build boards by hand from reference books, and from he would send letters to guys in Russia that were building boards by hand and asking them to take photos, put the photo in the mail, and send them to him so he could use them as reference points. The old guys had it hard because they didn't have a tool set built on top of a tool set, built on top of a tool set, built on top of a tool set. The whole point of it is that if you abstract everything enough, it becomes easy that even a retard can do it. They had to do it the hard way. So if you learn from them, i.e. somebody older than you, you're always going to get a more experienced perspective. So seek out the people that are older than you. Don't just call them boomers and write them off. Figure out like, what can they do to help you get your goals furthered? How can they help you make you be a better programmer? So it could be you find a mentor like me online, you pay money for it. It's a lot of money, but you get a top quality education, and there's no curriculum. There's no incentive for me to like, you have to learn this, and then you have to learn this, and then you have to learn this. And I go to student 2 and I say the exact same thing. And I go to student 3 and I say the exact same thing. Everybody's experience is different. By the way, the number one thing a mentor can do for you is not teach you how to be a better programmer. It's to teach you what actually goes into getting jobs, because you don't get hired on your technical expertise. When you first are applying for a job, that person doesn't know shit about coding or technology. Right. They're a hiring manager. They're a recruiter. There's somebody that doesn't do code from day to day. You have to get past them before you can even get introduced to somebody who might know something about programming. So psychology, super, super important. Learning how to sell something. If you can't show somebody a pen and sell this pen, you are not going to get a job. You have to understand about emotional intelligence. You have to understand about crafting the message that you're trying to craft for the person that you're trying to give it to. If you talk to a recruiter that's not technical and you talk to them like a geek, you're not going to win any points. They won't even remember your name. So you have to talk to a recruiter like a recruiter. You have to do something kind of strange and unexpected so they remember, oh yeah, that guy's name is Mark Tejas. I can't pronounce his name unless he tells me what his name, because it looks like Tellez to me, but I remember him because he's kind of fucking weird. He's very straight to the point, and he has colorful language. But at the end of the call, I liked him, and I can't even remember the other 10 guys I talked to today, but I remember him. Right. Then when you start getting to the recruiter or the technical people, then you switch gears and you start talking like a tech. Yeah, and that's like one thing like people don't understand, that your ability to code will play a small part in you being able to get a job. It's a combination of a lot of things. It's more about keeping your job than getting your job, to be honest.
Right, 100%. And like the fact that everybody is a salesperson, people got to get that through their heads. People got to understand that if you're not comfortable selling yourself, then you're never going to be successful. Like case in point. And like it's just the fact. And I tell people, get out there, start doing stuff, start going for interviews, start doing whatever you have to do, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is like you're your own advocate that's going to be able to advocate for yourself to get that job. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about yourself, talking about like what you're doing, the portfolios you're building, like, and you're not gonna get the way I got hired, number one is through making connections with people, and number two, not being afraid to talk to people. And
huge.
And sometimes like I fail. Yeah, there's many no's I had, but there are certain people I talk to, and just talking to them confidently, asking good questions, gave them another perception that they're like, yeah, I'd like to talk to this guy more. Let's give him a chance. You know what I mean?
My first job, I literally didn't leave the office. I went to I think it was a advertising firm, and they had a job out for a guy who knew HTML and CSS. And I applied for the job, and I went in, and essentially they were like, wait, you didn't go to college, you didn't finish high school, you're not really the guy we're looking for. Everybody here has a degree. They all have bachelors of arts, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I mean, sorry, I don't have that, but I guarantee you I'm better than anybody else you're going to get in here for this job. And the CEO was like, look, I like you, kid, but we don't hire people that don't have degrees. We just don't do it. And what I ended up telling him is like, look, dude, I'm going to work for free for a week. I'm just going to come in every day. If you call the police and you tell them to make me leave, I'll probably leave, maybe. Depends on if they make me leave. But I'm going to come here every day, and I'm just going to keep coming back to the people that are running their advertisement campaigns, and I'm going to say, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there any shit work I can do? Is there something, can I get you coffee? What can I do? And I got that job after a week because I just showed them what my work ethic was like. And as a kid, it was like, selling weed on the streets, you actually get to learn a lot about having a good work ethic, because if you don't get up, you don't eat. And they loved that about me. And I stayed at that advertising agency for like 2 years before I went to Intel. And I didn't learn anything about programming from those people, but I learned everything about sales and marketing from those people.
Yeah, and what's like, it's crazy that the best programmers, number one, don't have YouTube channels. There are some good ones, by the way. Not saying that
they're making money hand over fist.
They make it, and that's 100% true. I have a friend, he does very well. He has no interest of doing a YouTube channel. I want to have the YouTube channel.
Think about this also. A master magician is not going to start a YouTube channel to tell you all the secrets so you can take his job.
Right.
So there's a lot of programmers that don't want to share what they know because they think there's only so much pie and they want the pie for themselves.
Yeah, and for me though, like my struggle was so difficult that I don't want people to go and get caught up in the hype and try to get a development job and fail even more because they underestimated what it takes. They, because they were sold this dream. So I want to make sure
It's
that
okay
people
to fail,
understand
but you can't quit.
the reality. Yeah, you
The
can't
only
quit.
time
You
you
can't
lose
quit.
a race is when you stop getting back up. The only time you lose a fight is when you stop getting back up.
Yeah.
If somebody kicks the shit out of you and you can physically continue getting back up, you haven't lost the fight yet.
Yep.
If you really want to date a hot girl, sorry again, I guess this is sort of sexist, but I'm a dude speaking to a guy that's probably a dude. I don't know your pronouns, but I'm guessing.
Hey.
If you want to date a hot chick, you ask 100 hot chicks
Yeah, that's the numbers game.
to talk to you. 99
Yep.
of them are going to say no, but one of them is going to say yes.
You
And
only
once
need
you've
one.
got your
Yep.
in with one, you got your in with 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Getting a job is the same way. If you apply for one job and
It's how it works.
they blow you off and you quit, you're done. You're not a programmer. You're pumping gas again. If
Yeah,
you go
so-
to 5 interviews and you fail all 5 interviews, here's what you've learned. You've learned don't do what you did in those last 5
For the
interviews.
5
Try
interviews,
something
100%.
different. Right? So
That's why I
apply
like-
to 100 jobs and get one.
Yeah. That's why I like talking with you. You have no incentive to like say anything on YouTube to win like a like or subscriber. It's like, I don't care. This is the truth. This is what you need to do. I don't need to make you happy. And at the end of the day, like people on YouTube who become professional YouTubers, and nothing's wrong with doing that, right? My goal is to continue growing as a developer. Maybe one day I'll become a professional YouTuber, but that's not my goal right now. I want to get paid for being a developer, and the way you do it is becoming a good developer. But there's no incentive for me to sell you a dream or tell you things, and that's why I tell people honestly what they need to know. And the truth is,
It's a different
nobody.
skill set. I know guys that started and girls who started a YouTube channel, and frankly, they're not very good programmers, and they already have 80,000 subscribers, and I'm sitting.
Yeah,
at
they're
12.
killing it on YouTube, and they're
Because
making
they're
money off
really
YouTube.
good
God
at
bless them.
whatever it is that makes the YouTube algorithm go yum yum. My videos do really well in search because people are always searching for the kind of information
For a
I'm
solution.
teaching, and,
Yep.
and I go straight to like, this is a real world solution. You're
Yep.
going to build your own components. I'm not going to show you what npm package to install. You're going to build the damn npm package, and a lot of people don't want that. They want the easy route, but the ones that actually are interested in becoming better programmers, they watch more of my videos because it's not 100 seconds on MongoDB. This is what MongoDB is. This is how you work with it. This is how it's different than Postgres, how it's different than MySQL. And I don't care if I don't have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. I do it because I really enjoy trying to get the hard work that I put into my head out to help somebody else, because I didn't have any of those opportunities. I had to make all my opportunities. And I know somewhere out there are people just like me that get told no, 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 no. And I want to show them that all you have to do is just keep kicking in the door, and eventually somebody's going to say yes.
You're going to get there. And the thing I was going to say, like, look, like everybody's on YouTube. Great. Good to have all you here. I am not going to pay somebody else's bills. Some other YouTube channel is not going to take care of your family. Someone's not going to like when you whatever. No one gives a crap. You know, that's the truth. Like we care about ourselves more. And I'm not saying it like look at me or look at you. It's the fact. Like at the end of the day, can you get the job or not? And if you're not getting a job, what are you not doing that is like not allowing you to get there? Are you not building enough projects? Are you not going to enough interviews? Are you not talking, or you have no idea what you're doing, so you need a mentor, like whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I could care less what you do. I could care less. So I'll give you like this. Like
you also need different mentors, right? Like it's not just one skill set that gets you a job. So you can't just have one mentor and think that that's going to get you a great job. Let me give you an example. There's this guy named Danny Thompson on Twitter and on YouTube. And I wouldn't say he's the best programmer, but this dude is so fucking incredibly smart that he went from like managing chicken restaurants and gas stations to becoming a programmer. And again, he's not one of those guys that has like a computer science background and shit. Like he just made it happen. He's a hustler.
He hustles.
And if you want to get a mentor, you need more than one mentor. If you need a hustle mentor. So Danny Thompson is a great guy to watch for his videos. Even if you're not necessarily learning the best programming from him, listen to what he says. Watch his Twitter
Here's the
feed,
funny thing.
see how motivationally he is. And pick
Here's
up those life skills from him, and you're guaranteed to get further along in your job process than if you just listen to Linus Torvalds.
Yeah,
He's a great programmer, but he's not going to help you get a job because nobody even likes him.
Yeah. Yeah, here's the hilarious thing. Like, there's people I just don't like. Because Russian people, sometimes they look at someone's face, they're like, fuck, I don't like that guy. And Danny is one of those guys. But with that being said, I may not like the guy, but I respect his hustle. And
I like Danny a lot.
He kills it in the sense of, well, you know, I have my personal beliefs. And if someone doesn't share them, I'm just not going to waste my time with them. But the point is, he hustles, he does the work, he knows how to sell himself. If anybody's going to help you get a job, it's going to be, especially using LinkedIn, it's going to be Danny. You know what I mean? And the point is, here I am.
You already talked about how important connections are, and
yeah, but the point, what I'm saying is, like, here I am, a jackass on YouTube, clearly don't like somebody, but it doesn't stop me from learning the fact that they have a valuable skill to teach that I know 100% is very important to get a job. If you can't sell yourself on LinkedIn, where a lot of people are, you're going to have a hard time getting a job. And so what I tell people, it's like, look, you don't have to like me. I don't have to like you, but respect the work and the truth and the honesty people put out there so you could get, you know, hired and get the job. Because at the end of the day, like, you're the one who's going to have to do the work. You know what I'm saying? You're the one who's going to have to hustle and pick and choose from the people that share the skills that are required to get a job. You know what I mean? And
well,
that's
not only
plain
that,
and simple.
For me, diversity, I'm Mexican, Cherokee, Choctaw, Irish, French Canadian. Like, I'm fucking Heinz 57 as you can be. To me, that's not diversity. Diversity is diversity of thought, diversity of background, diversity of opinion. I don't have to be religious to have really good friends that are Christian, Jew, and Muslim. I don't necessarily follow any of those creeds, but I know really good people that believe in things that my brain says is absolute batshit. But it doesn't mean that I don't have to like them just because we have a diversity of thought, right? So I think the biggest problem in today's world is that if people don't line up with you politically, religiously, whatever, give whatever metric you want, then you feel like you have to write them off and cancel them. And I think it's not good for them and it's not good for you because you're potentially cutting yourself off of a great source. Like, look at Nick Cage. Nick Cage sometimes does an amazing movie and he's an amazing actor. And sometimes Nick Cage is a drugged out fucking nutcase. So if you just see one of his movies and you say, well, he's just a dumb drugged out nutcase, and you don't watch any of his other movies, you're only hurting yourself because he's got some really good movies. Right? Look at the guy who got pulled over by the cops and was yelling crazy racist shit. What's his name from Lethal Weapon?
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson is a fucking genius director sometimes. And sometimes he's a total asshole. But if you just say, well, look, he believes in shit I don't believe, and he likes things that I don't like, and he's this and he's that, and so therefore I'm not going to listen to him, you're just cutting your own throat. So don't do that. Doesn't matter if you like somebody personally. It matters. Do they have something that you can take and put into your toolkit to make yourself
that's true.
successful?
But listen, the reason why I like you, if I'm an asshole, you're gonna tell me I'm an asshole to my face. You know what I mean?
Because
that's what I appreciate. Right. And so for me, like, hey, that's the most important thing is, can't someone tell me I'm an asshole to my face? And if they can, that's perfectly fine, because a man's word to me is the most important thing. If I see someone talk a good game, let me finish
that's
here.
Also a sign of emotional intelligence. When I was young and I collided with people, I didn't handle it the way I handle it now. Now it's okay for me. I don't necessarily even think it's being an asshole. It's being direct,
honest.
right?
Right.
So, like, if
I appreciate
you
that.
said something that I didn't agree with when I was young, my butt would hurt, and we would not be able to be in a conversation together. And as I've gotten much older, I'm in my 40s now. I break my foot on fucking motorcycles now, and I never used to break anything. You learn at some point that, like, we can disagree about really big things. It doesn't mean that we have to disagree about everything, and it doesn't mean we have to make personal judgments about those disagreements. And by the way, all the reasons that I got fired from jobs in my early career was just because of that, because I wasn't understanding that you're never going to like 100% of anybody. You may hate your boss, but you still have a lot that you can learn from your boss. And even if you don't have anything to learn from your boss, he pays your paycheck. So you should probably not hate him, even if he's a total fucking asshole. Even if he's the worst guy, like the bot, like what's his face on Office Space, it doesn't matter. He's the guy above you. So do what you can to make him feel good about himself. Do what you can to make that person feel like you're an important part of the team, because otherwise you have to go home and explain to your wife and kids why you don't have a job anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. Tech Rally's like, let Paul speak, please. He wants me to talk more shit. That's why. No, what I'm saying is that, listen.
That's why I watch your videos.
Listen, first of all, I'm going to tell you this. If someone says one thing, but they act differently, I'm Russian. Like, a man's word is like the most important thing. You're Mexican, dude. That's the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
Like people get cut for less. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, that's important. And I'm not saying that it has to be important to everybody. And so I made my decision and I can't go back on it. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm never going to go back on it because I know that I burned bridges before with people. They will never give me a second chance. And it is what it is. And just respect it. And the thing for me is that, you know, I like people that are honest to your face and behind your back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what I appreciate. And that's just not the feeling I get with some people. No names mentioned.
Still, even if you get the feeling that they're wishy-washy, just remember that if they have something that you can take out of them and put into your pocket, it's still a net gain for you.
Hold on. Dennis, you're still here? Don't listen to Tech Rally. Man, I get a lot of like famous YouTubers here coming on and listening to this random dude talk mad crap. Listen, it is what it is.
Proof that you're interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. But to me, it is what it is. But the point is that here's the thing. I don't want people to, like, if you're going to do stuff and you're going to switch careers to do whatever, understand that at the end of the day, you're the one who has to do the work. Nobody else is going to do the work for you. Look at you. You're making me jealous, bro. It's you're the one who has to do the work. Like, no one cares. No one's gonna help you. You have to take care of your family. You gotta get your own job.
This is true.
And Dennis, dude, I was gonna ask you about Ivy because I wonder if there was like a longer version of your last name, like Ivanovich or something. But do you still speak Russian, Dennis? Привет с России, мой брат. Anyway, listen.
By the way, for anybody who's just watching, philosophy is a very, very important thing if you want to grow as a person and as a developer and get better jobs and make more money and all that good shit. You cannot go wrong with Stoic philosophy and Russian philosophy, which are very, very tightly intertwined. Some of the best philosophers of the 20th century were Russian philosophers.
Yeah, they're heavy books.
You're not going to read it to feel good about yourself.
Yeah. Ivanov, yeah, makes sense. But what I was going to say, like, look, there's so many people on YouTube. You got to find someone that you fit with. And if you're getting, by the way, I'm going to say, I know we all have opinions. And the whole point of this, like, conversation is that it's perfectly fine. Because people that resonate with me might not resonate with somebody else and vice versa. You just have to find someone that you could be like, hey, this guy's kind of like me when when he started, let me follow this guy, you know, and everybody does different things. But one thing that I know for a fact, and this one thing, like I said, like, I could hate people, doesn't matter, but I respect the hustle, I respect the work that they do, and I will always give credit where it's due, even if I don't like someone. But with that being said, YouTube is one of the hardest places to become successful. And if you could make it on YouTube, it's amazing. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of the people that you see here on YouTube who talk about coding, regardless if they're a good programmer or not a good programmer, they're a good hustler in terms of they will do whatever it takes to become successful. And if you're going to take a takeaway, is that take that work ethic and apply it in your life. Watch the same videos, hate on people, troll people, it doesn't matter, but put in the work these other people are putting in. Like, I know why Dan is successful. I know why DevMentor is successful. I know why Coding Face is successful. I know why Danny Thompson is successful. Even Chris Sean, I know why he's successful. Yep. You know, like, regardless how I feel about half those people.
Guys like Richard Stallman, who changed our world and our industry, is going to die poor. There's so many really good programmers out there that are technically fucking monsters of programming. Their proficiency is out of this world, and they live paycheck to paycheck because that's the only thing they're good at. They're not good at the other soft skills that are so important to making a living. Yeah. And money doesn't buy everything, but being somebody who's been so broke that I had to lose teeth because I couldn't afford the dental care when I was a teenager, money is fucking nice. You can do good with it, you can do bad with it. You know what you can do with no money? Not a damn thing.
Yeah, and one thing that like one another traps I find with like web development or programming in general is that a lot of people think it's a money solution problem. They're like, if only I could get this higher paying job, I'm going to make more money and all my problems are going to be solved. Me, like I used to owe 60 grand to the government. I had so many money issues. I've been homeless. I've been broke. And let me tell you, programming is not going to solve your money issues.
It can make them worse. Because
Yes.
you can go from making
Yes.
$10 an hour to making $50 an hour, and then spend all
And
of
that
your
buys
money
a lot of
on
coke and
alcohol
hookers, and that's for
and
sure.
waste
Yep.
the rest of it,
See,
and you're still
see.
back to the square one where you have no money at the end of each month.
Yeah.
And
So-
to that, I suggest all of your readers get the book, The Richest Man
Yep.
in Babylon.
Yep.
It changed my financial life. When I turned 40, I was
Yeah.
making a lot of money. I had no money in my pocket. Now I have over
There's another one
$10,000 in
now.
my trading account, and it's completely because of that
Yeah.
book.
And there's another one, like Greatest Salesman or something like that. I think written by the same dude, because that was who wrote that book?
Rich Man in Babylon is an anecdotal collection of evidence from Babylon, so it doesn't really have like a single author.
Okay, so
I think
there's
you're
another
talking
one.
about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, maybe?
No. This ugly, like something, I forgot like his name, but he wrote a book, The Greatest Salesman Ever, and it basically talks about the importance of being able to sell yourself and stuff like that. And it's set like a story, like an anecdotal story. It's pretty good.
I'll have to look that up or give me a link afterwards because I'll read it. I love reading books.
Yeah, it's a great book. And the guy basically, literally, before he wrote it, he found himself in like a side alley ready to blow his brains out. And then he's like, man, I got to do something with my life. And he kind of went through this whole thing. Yeah, greatest salesman in the world. A great book. I suggest everybody reads it. Thanks,
I learned
Dennis.
a lot from
I
reading
really appreciate
Donald
it.
Trump's The
Yep.
Art of the Deal.
Here we go.
And whether you like him or you hate him or whether you think he wrote the book or the ghostwriter wrote, like none of that shit matters. The things you learn in the book are actually really, really good. So that's another thing. Like you have to separate the art from the artist. There are books out there that maybe they're by somebody that you don't even want to say their name because you're afraid of getting canceled or whatever, but don't throw out that knowledge. Sure, maybe his dad gave him $1 million when he started out, right? And my dad didn't give me $1 million, but he turned that into $1 billion, and I turned my no money into a whole lot less than $1 billion.
Listen.
What's your favorite book other than that one?
My favorite book?
Books is it's the best resource for people.
Atlas Shrugged.
I haven't read that. I'm sad to say.
It's
on my list. I have not read it yet.
Yeah, Ayn Rand, like I used to read a lot of her stuff. And it's funny, like you read her books and then you see her in real life, you're like, oh, yeah, whatever. But it's a great book. I mean, there's a lot of like stuff I read. I think like you have to be an avid reader just because sometimes, you know, like you don't live long enough to get all the experience. So just read books and get it from somebody else. It's such a important skill, you know. And if you don't like reading, use audible.com. Not a sponsor of the show. Put on 2x, get like Tony Lopez or whatever his name is, knowledge, you know, read them books. But
I agree.
you want to have a well-rounded experience, like in general. Like a lot of people that are successful is because they are well-rounded in like a lot of different things and they understand, you know, and so able to talk about things better. But let's come back to some programming. I don't even know. I mean, I just have so much fun talking, just shooting the shit. I mean, we could continue doing it.
Learn functional programming.
Yeah, functional programming. At the end of the day, look, there's so many different paths to get to where you're going. You just have to decide on one path. You have to stick with it until you get hired. Like I know, like Dennis Ivey, his path was, and he shared Ogmandino. I can't pronounce it right. He was the author of the greatest sales book in the world, or a salesman in the world. But Dennis Ivey, he learned Python. He has actually some good courses on Python. And he did it that way. That's how he got his, like, he built, you know, his thing. He sold it. Now he's on YouTube making tutorials. You know, God bless him. But the thing that I would tell you guys,
Python has a lot to teach a programmer about good code.
Yeah.
I think Lisp, I never was paid a dime to write Lisp code for anybody, but it did the most to change my programming style, and whether I'm writing Ruby, Python, JavaScript, whatever. Python taught me a lot about a mix of functional and procedural programming to write clean code. Ruby taught
Yeah.
me what I needed to know about how good dynamic programming is, but also when not to go overboard, because dynamic programming and metaprogramming can make your programs practically impossible to read and debug. And then you take all these things together and you put them into a language that will actually get you work today, which is JavaScript. And you will end up writing really, really good, clean, idiomatic JavaScript that is
Yeah.
informed by all of these other languages. So don't think that you can't learn other languages to become a better programmer, but don't just sit in the JavaScript
Listen.
ecosystem and learn 500 frameworks,
Yeah,
because
but
that's
here,
not.
yeah. Here's the funny thing. I was gonna say, you mentioned Ruby. There's one thing Ruby taught me, man. If you take too long, you're gonna be late to the party. Because I started learning Ruby so long ago, and then I never stuck with it. I moved on to other languages. By the time, like, I was like, oh, I know Ruby on Rails. There was not that many jobs left, and so yeah, right. So the point, and then I just did JavaScript. I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna do JavaScript, and you can't go wrong with JavaScript. But the thing is, it's like, look, if you keep jumping, like, it doesn't matter if you do Python, doesn't matter if you do React and JavaScript, doesn't matter if you do even C#. You know what I mean, with whatever, because there's still jobs out there. There's a lot of jobs there, and so like you just do that. But the point is, just pick one thing. Don't like hop around. Like, you don't have to like me, you know. You don't have to like Mark. You don't have to like Dennis. But whoever you resonate with most, stick to that team. Do your thing. Get your job. And once you get a job, learn something else. Like, you know what I mean? But, you know,
Well,
like,
anybody who does woodworking, boat building, mechanics, electrical engineering, playing musical instrument, they'll tell you it takes about 1,000 hours to be able to say that you can actually do something well. Until then, it's a bunch of mistakes, and you slowly get away from the mistakes and toward the proficiency. But if you spend a week learning how to do carpentry, and you spend a week with hand tools, and then a week with power tools, and then you switch over to mechanics, and then you switch over to learning electrical engineering and wiring, you're going to be really terrible at all of those things. So learn a bunch of different things over a lifetime, but you have to put enough time into each one of them so that you didn't just waste your time.
Yeah. Listen, if I listen to my friend who has been my mentor for a while, and he still helps me out a lot reviewing my code, I would have gotten a job literally 4 years earlier. Like, I'm not even making that up. Like, I have, like, I'm 41. Yeah, I'm 41 years old, and I would have been working as a developer like at 37 at the latest, because, like, you know, I started my GitHub account so long ago. I just didn't do anything because I just like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do that. The point is, you could get to where you want to go with like whatever path you choose, as long as it's not something crazy.
As long as it's commercially viable.
Yes, thank you. As long as it's commercially viable.
And by the way,
in demand.
If you are a 60-year-old COBOL programmer, all the other programmers are going to laugh at you and not let you play the reindeer games. But I know 60-year-old COBOL programmers that make more than 6 figures a year, because there's still shit tons of software that's in COBOL, and there are no more COBOL programmers. So when I say something is commercially viable, it doesn't always mean that it's just the biggest pool, because then you're kind of like the littlest fish in the biggest ocean.
Yeah,
sometimes it's good to be the big fish in a little tiny ocean, because you're the last one swimming. You can make a lot of money. Like the WordPress templates or the Shopify templates. What's better for you? Do you want to be proficient programmer? Do you want people to look at your code and just be like, God, Mark just writes the sexiest, cleanest code I've ever seen?
Yep.
Which is totally ego. Or do you want somebody to look at you and go, damn, that motherfucker knows how to make money? And for me, it's a mix of the two. I want the respect of being a really sound programmer, and I want to have the intelligence to not be poor month to month. But if there's somebody out there that just wants to be rich, I don't begrudge them at all. Go be rich.
Yeah, 100%.
And I exploit the shit out of it.
I'm curious, like, exploring, you know, making money with Shopify. Like, I'm not going to be a Shopify developer, but just like to know more about it and like whatever. I mean, I'm sticking with React. Like, you know, I'm more interested in just becoming better at programming and becoming a better programmer. And, you know, like a couple of episodes ago, I had someone, you know, who was a computer science student. I just love talking about code because, like, I'm a nerd. Like, a lot of people don't think I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. You know what I mean? It's like, I just enjoy it. And speaking of which, like,
you're just a nerd that dresses like Will Smith in the 1990s.
Yeah, exactly, which is perfectly fine. Listen, I wore this shirt because I respect you enough. I was going to wear my other shirt that was a little bit messy, whatever. I was going to let my hair be wild, you know what I mean? But I'm like, you know what? I respect Mark. Let me put a nice shirt on. We want to have some sort of standard on the show, not to be too ridiculous, you know?
And then I show up in my white T-shirt. All I need is like a pack of
Dude,
cigarettes rolled up in my sleeve.
you know what? That would have been awesome. Bro, next time, it would have been fucking sweet because that's old school. That's how people used to carry their. I mean, people still do it if they're cool enough. Like, I don't smoke anymore. Funny story. So, people watching this stream, they're going to be like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? So, I'm 9 years old. I'm living in Moscow, Russia. I'm walking home. Bunch of bullies find me. And they decide to beat the crap out of me. And to have fun with me, they put a bunch of cigarettes in my mouth and light them all on fire. Then I go home. My mom is Russian, of course. Russian parents are crazy. And my mom's like, you son of a bitch, you've been smoking. La, la. I got such a beating from my mom. Then she told my dad. Then my dad gave me a beating because in Russia, beating was fine. That's totally normal. And so after that, I was like, you know what? Out of spite, I started smoking when I was 9 years old. So I remember coming to America around 10 years old. I'm sitting like smoking cigarettes like a pro. This old man like looks at me and I'm like, look at him like, yeah, like the fuck you looking at? Excuse my French. Just to show you, like, look, people make mistakes, people grow up. But the point is, like, to make this change, switch careers, you got to find some level of responsibility. Like, you came from like tough place, I came, and that people look at us, they'll never like guess just because we made that leap, we made that change, we put in the effort, and that's what people have to understand. There's no magic pill. It's the effort, it's the hard work, and it's not giving up. So I'm entitled to my opinion. You're entitled to my opinion. I don't have to make everybody like me. Yeah, there you go. But the point is that I want to be honest with people that they don't miss the most important part. Courses are great. Fine. Udemy. You like Udemy. I love Udemy. I'm not going to, like I still buy Udemy courses like a drug addict needing that next hit and not even do anything with it. Right. I know. But you're talking to a drug addict. So the Udemy drug addict, figuratively
kids,
speaking.
don't listen to the heroin addict.
Yeah, exactly. Heed my warning. But the point is, I didn't get a job because I was taking Udemy courses. Like, you know what I mean? It's the attitude of not giving up. It's like you read any biography, autobiography, and people who made something out of them, it's their tenacity and their attitude of not giving up and just fucking grinding through it. And that's why I want to have my channel on YouTube because, you know, maybe one day I will sell out. Who knows? I don't want to say I wouldn't sell out.
Well, it's a body of work. It's an easy way it's like if you go out fishing and you put one fish hook in the water, you're going to catch one fish. If you go out fishing and you hang 10 fish hooks over the side of your boat, they're all different size fish hooks with different types of bait. You're much more likely to get more fish, right? Having a YouTube channel is maybe part ego, and for a lot of people, it might be mostly ego.
For me, it's branding.
Giant marketing mechanism so that the work comes to you instead of you constantly hunting for work.
Yeah.
And
by the way,
what are you at now? You're at what? 4,000?
No, bro.
I remember when you had like 300.
Like 2,000. I'm like at 2,100.
Yeah, but I remember when you had
says, "Oh man, don't smoke, kids. 100% right. Don't smoke." By the way, the reason I look so handsome right now is because I quit smoking when I was 11.
Started at 90, quit when he was 11. I didn't make
that. Was a dark place.
Mistake. I smoked for 30 years, and I smoked like an ounce a week of weed
that's
for like 20 years.
Different story.
And I have to say, I'm not preaching to anybody, but my life got a lot better when I stopped being stoned all the time and when I stopped smoking cigarettes all the time. Because when you have nicotine, and I see this with Adderall and I see it with people that vape, their brain stops functioning every 10 minutes while they go chase that high again, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just sit at your computer and focus on work for 3 hours straight because every 10 minutes you start thinking nicotine or THC or whatever it is. And, you know, like I'm drinking my whiskey, but I don't drink anything until after 6 o'clock ever.
Yeah.
And I do it in moderation. So, I mean, like if you want to spend your life shit-faced, that's fine, but don't expect it to bring you great job opportunities. Sometimes you have to put on your adult outfit and, you know, live like an adult in order to get the adult benefits. Listen,
this is what I'm going to say. Like, a lot of you guys don't know me, don't know my personal history. And let me tell you this, I'm 41 years old and I've been in like lots of different circles. I'm still paying for mistakes that I made. If I were to go back and tell myself a lesson, like one thing, if I could say
You wouldn't have
one
listened
thing,
to yourself.
I know it's true. It's true. But one thing, this is what I tell my daughter. I'm like, listen, just be responsible, like period. Because if you're not, the mistakes you're going to make, they're going to haunt you for the rest of your life. There are certain things I don't have now because of my stupidity when I was younger. And, you know, my daughter, like, God bless her soul, like, everything she's been through, I'm just glad that that's one thing she learned. She's in the Navy now, super responsible, and she's going to have a future way better than I will just because she's not doing stupid shit.
Sometimes the best thing that we can give to our children is our bad example so that they can go, you know, that didn't work out so well for my dad.
Yeah, 100%. And that's true. And like, and you just have to, you know.
Isn't that mentorship? You're mentoring your daughter. You're like, look, this is how you don't do it.
Yeah, dude, the stories I have with her when she was 4 years old, I wanted to teach her about compound interest. And, oh my God. So I'm like, Marissa, I'm going to give you one M&M. But if you wait till tomorrow, I'll give you another one. And then if you wait for a day after, I'm going to give you two.
Which is probably the most important lesson a person can learn.
Listen, this is how this ended. She started to cry, and she's like, Daddy, I just want an M&M. And I'm like, what an idiot. Your kid just wants an M&M, and here you are torturing her. But that's because Russians, you know,
I was going to say, that sounds like Russian philosophy to me.
Yeah, they got crazy lessons. Bro.
Don't you know that your grandparents died of starvation in the Ukraine?
Exactly.
Don't you dare eat that M&M.
So I'm going to tell you a funniest story because you're from Mexico and you guys eat tamales, right? I never fucking had a tamale before. Here's the funniest story. My wife, she was like straight up Mexican. I love her to death. We broke up because she got sick and this crazy shit happened. And sometimes things happen. But amazing person, love her to death, love her family. But I'm sitting my first time when you go, before you ask the father, because I had to ask the father, can I marry your daughter? I'm sitting there at a huge table. Like, Mexican families are huge. Everybody's there. Everybody. So they bring the tamales still wrapped in the thing, and they give me like 3 of them, and they're all watching. So I take my knife and fork, and I just cut it through the husk and eat it. And nobody says a single word. Listen, nobody says a single word. And then I'm like, oh, these are so good. Can I have another one? So they give me another one. I eat my second one. And then all of a sudden, everybody else gets a tamale. They unwrap it, and then they eat it. I'm like,
was it a banana or a corn husk?
It was a corn husk. Dude, tamales, though, they're the greatest things in the world. Bro, I also discovered putting hot sauce, Tabasco sauce in your beer. Another thing, like it's Mexican food is one of my favorite. Well, Dos Equis or whatever.
Thing, that's pure Mexican culture. If we see somebody doing something stupid, we would prefer the comedic entertainment of just letting them keep doing it than to try to correct their behavior, because 100%. We know that eventually they'll correct their own behavior, but in the meantime, we get free television. It's like a telenovela.
Dude, I also learned the right way of making coffee by boiling the milk. I don't know if you do that. You don't drink
coffee? My mom does that. My grandma does that.
Yeah, but I don't drink coffee like that too. But I was like, at the time, I was like, oh my God, the sweet. They have so much great stuff there. It's like amazing. And
well, I was can you believe chocolate comes from here? Isn't that a weird thing?
It's insane. That's so weird. It's insane.
Crazy. How did they not have chocolate in the rest of the world for all those thousands of years?
Dude, I was in Mexico when Marquez fought Pacquiao, and I thought he killed him. I was like, oh my God. Oh, that was like the greatest day because they had like 3 fights, I guess, and then he just knocked him out that he never recovered. He's still recovering from that look. You know, that was insane.
Mexican boxers are dangerous. They don't look
they're legit.
Scary.
They're legit.
But there's something about the heavy hands of these skinny little rooster Mexican boxers that they're devastating. Yeah,
Marquez is like, I love that fight because he was like, he must have been like in his 40s or late 30s when he fought Pacquiao. So I really liked it because I was like, this man has to outsmart Pacquiao. And he played like a really good game, and he did. And it was fantastic. But got messed up by Pacquiao.
You know what it is
was-
in like in Los Angeles? Well, I guess generally in America, if you're from the ghetto, you're dark brown or you're black, you think like I'm going to be a rapper, I'm going to be a football player, I'm going to be an NBA star. That's how you get out of the hood. In Mexico, it's boxing.
It's boxing,
So
100%.
some of these kids, like they're like Russian chess players. Their dads make them start learning boxing at like 4 years old, and they're dangerous with their fists by the time they're 17.
Yeah, a lot of great boxers from Mexico.
From all Latin America, Latin America is like
amazing.
football, boxing, and pimping. Those are your only ways out.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. It's great culture though. Like when I went to when they had like their parties, I literally felt like it was like a Russian party just because of like this concept of the whole family and how you bring everybody together. Everybody just drinks and has a good time. It's like same thing as like Russian parties. Like you see all the little ones running around, pretty wild. Yeah.
I think it's the way it used to be for everybody, but the family unit in the U.S. was destroyed. Like, I don't have a family. My dad died in prison, and my mom had mental illnesses. And, like, our family was really small because we were raised in the U.S. They didn't want us to speak Spanish. We only spoke English in the house because they wanted us to be American, not Mexican. And I didn't experience a big family until I left the U.S. and I married my wife in Mexico. And, now it's a fucking giant family, but they're all on her side.
Yeah.
My sister, her boyfriend just asked to marry her. And there was like 300 people at my house for the event from her family and his family. And I have literally nobody in my family. So I really, really enjoy that thing that I missed out on growing up, which is the big family unit where everybody doesn't actually have to like each other, but they can still get together and drink copious amounts of alcohol and eat copious amounts of food. And there's no problem. It's like when you're all together, it's you against the world. And in the U.S., it seems like families are against each other and with the world. It's really weird.
Yeah, here we go. This is a good time. Yeah,
you asking me about the
out of control.
I used to do, right? Maybe you and me and Dennis and some other guys, we should start having like a whiskey Friday where we just sit around.
That'll be awesome. We should do that. We should do that for sure.
Answer questions from the people in chat.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Like we should do that. It's have some fun with these streams. Yeah, guys, smash the like button. Let me know in the comments if you guys have any questions. Let us know. I know like we've been kind of going off the board here, but I want to thank all of you guys who are here because this is all about having a good time, but being honest with you guys. I like getting different guests to my show because I want you guys to get as many different perspectives on everything that we do. And at the same time, sometimes having fun is great. So if you guys have questions or just want to let us know what you guys thinking, how much you like this, let us know in the comments if you want to have that stream where we drink some whiskey and answer your questions and lead to a bunch of wild stuff, I guess. But what I like about this is that the truth is like, look, we're like real people. We all have our complications. We all have our problems, and somehow we became developers. We did this, we did that, you know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, just don't give up, keep doing your work, keep hustling. You guys are going to get there. And subscribe to the DevMentorLive channel, subscribe to this channel. Like, I'm always going to tell you how hard things are. I'm always going to tell you the truth because like I wasted so much of my life. And the one thing that bugs me is that if I give you an advice and it wastes your time that you could be spending with your family, your loved ones, your kids, whatever, like I would feel so devastated because I wasted so many years of my life, and time is something that you're never going to get back. And so, like we might get wild sometimes, but the one thing we're always going to do is tell you honest truths here. Jordan Foster here. I really like how many diverse backgrounds are in the deaf community. Yep. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of diverse people, but I want people to understand that the whole point is, here we go. That's a good question.
I was going to say, Paul, can I answer a couple of questions in chat that I see?
Yeah. Here's one that I pulled up, and then we'll go to whatever ones I missed. Question for Mark. How do you deal with ageism?
Be really fucking good.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the only way you can defeat ageism because our industry does not appreciate older developers. A company would rather hire 10 shitty junior developers who are going to destroy their intellectual property through attrition and through just, shit going bad over time and technical debt that doesn't get taken care of, rather than hiring one or two senior developers who cost a lot more money, because to them they think that it's a good value, and it's not. It destroys their intellectual property. So my advice for ageism is, if you're going to speak about well, first off, try to look as young, as youthful as you can, right? So if you want to be one of those guys that has a big gray beard and you're going to be able to wow them with your master of Unix skills and your incredible grasp of multi-paradigm programming, you could do that. There's a niche for you. If you don't think you can compete with that and you can manage to look younger than you are, like I say, you should be mentored by older people, but you should also be culturally connected to the younger people, because they're going to become your managers before you know it. And if you can't connect to them, if they just look at you and say, okay, boomer, you're going to be hurt. So as far as ageism, be really good at what you do. Get proficient. Read books by people who are smarter than you. Be influenced by people who are smarter than you. You want to be the worst musician in your band. Don't be the best musician in your band, because you won't learn anything. So that's why I say, look to Douglas Crockford, look to Kevin Henley, look to, Uncle Bob, look to Rich Hickey. Some of their talks will just make your mind melt. Okay.
Yeah.
There was another one in here was,
let me just add my 2 cents in ageism just before you go to so here's the thing, guys, people gonna nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. But when I was 33 years old, I went on Stack Overflow and I asked if I should learn to code, because at that time I still felt I was older. And somebody told me to jump off the bridge and kill myself because I was already too old at 33, which is, you're never too old to learn to code. But understand, there's definitely a thing like ageism. And if someone tells you it doesn't exist, it does exist. It's a thing. And so there's a couple ways to combat. One is exactly like Mark said. Another one, guys, please make friends in the community with other developers. Make your circle. Because a lot of the opportunity I had, I was referred to people by others. And when you are referred to somebody else besides also having the skill, people are going to see you from a different light. But if you don't have that referral, you're just showing up with a resume and you're not skilled, it's very, very difficult. So I just want to throw that out there.
If you're going fishing and all you have is a shark hook and all you have is tuna bait, you're not going to catch any fish, right? So there are companies that are only interested in hiring you if you're a 20-year-old woman that was born in Africa and are now living in England and you're Hindu, because they have checkboxes to mark off. If that doesn't match you, don't waste your time at those companies. If you are an older person, find a company that hires older people. Don't fight for the job with 100 people that are 25 years old if it's the type of company like Facebook, who will only hire you if you're under 25. And you can, answer 500 questions in the interview. And if you only answer 499, they just tell you no. Pitch to your skills. Do the things that are going to make sense.
And just before people freak out, there's plenty of jobs available, and there's a lot of times where people are looking for someone who's mature, who had experience in other fields, who they know understands how customers think, how manager thinks, and they know that they're going to be able to relate across the board from being a developer to a manager to understand the customer needs and having that maturity. So don't think there's jobs don't exist. We're not trying to freak you out. Just know that you will have to look for it, and that's the void you would have to fill.
If you're trying to get hired by a guy that's younger than you and he's not a CEO, he's like a hiring manager, you're probably not going to get the job. So if you go into an interview and everybody on the interview team is younger than you, maybe you should just cut your time short, and go somewhere else and not waste your time.
I'll still say give it a try for practice.
Paul,
go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, buddy.
Does Mark monetize any of his projects? This is why I'm not a rich guy. I enjoy coding to the point to where I code just because I really, really, really like solving problems all the time. It's also why I don't install a lot of NPM packages. I write my own code because to me, it's a video game. I like coding. So I don't monetize that stuff in the sense of you have to buy my source code. And I probably should, but I don't. But what I do is these projects that I put up on YouTube, what it does is it's fish hooks over the boat. It gets lots of eyes on me, and it's lots of social proof so that I have to work less hard to get new clients, new students, new consulting gigs, etc. So in the future, I've tried lots of different things to monetize stuff. Like you have to pay for a subscription to get access to the GitHub repos, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different ways of doing it. What I find is you end up spending more time doing that, and everybody wants shit for free anyway. So you just turn off a large group of your audience. So the answer is no. Most of my monetization comes from the fact that I'm so easily accessible on YouTube that I have more students than I have time for, and I have more consulting jobs than I have time for. And so what that means is that if I'm working with you and you piss me off and you're toxic and you're rude, I just don't work with you anymore. And I don't miss you one bit when you go out the door. And when you come back in a month and you're begging me to come back, like this just happened, and then you talk shit in the email and you talk about what a terrible person I am, et cetera, et cetera. If you've got lots of fish hooks over the water, you can just work with the people you like, which is much more satisfying. So for instance, I charge, $120 to $200 an hour for consulting. I only charge $90 an hour for mentorship. But the reason is my students obviously don't have as much money as a company. But also, it's just so much more rewarding to work with guys like Paul, or to work with students that have maybe less experience than Paul and are trying to build up their programming, because you're dealing directly with people. And in my experience, I prefer people over companies.
You guys could go.
How do you deal
Let
with
me just throw this link in here. One second. And you guys could go to DevMentorLive's website. I'll put it in the link here. And also I'm putting on the screen so you guys could see. Definitely, like, I took some one-on-ones, and definitely could say that Mark definitely knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to like say that. Like, he's got a lot of great, testimonials. So in terms of like learning, you're not going to be disappointed for sure. And so if you are looking for some one-on-one, definitely don't be shy. And Mark doesn't do this, but he said, hey, Paul, if you're going to find a group of people and you all want to jump on the call because maybe someone can't, pay $90, like, I'll be willing to do a group if he could do it, but just kind of throwing out there. But normally, he charges $90 an hour. And a lot of people come like, oh, like, that's too much money. Listen, you're going to get the value from the course. The one tip I'm going to say, come prepared, know what questions you're going to ask so you don't waste anybody's time. But it's definitely like worth it. Go ahead, Mark.
Danium says, I've been in tutorial hell since 2018. Still can only write one line of JS code. Reason not sticking with one path, as you said. Yeah. Don't be a raccoon. Don't get excited about the shiny things and constantly chase the shiny things. Figure out what works. Figure out what the industry wants. Do your market research and then focus on that thing. And when somebody creates a new framework for front-end development or whatever, you can't just get excited about it and go running off and doing that thing. You got to keep putting in the work where the market share is. For instance, Next.js. It's literally Ruby on Rails for JavaScript development, and therefore it's a killer app. It's definitely going to be the framework that people are looking for when they want to have client and server all in one monolithic application, which is way easier to maintain than microservices. One deployment through like Vercel or Netlify or whatever, zero configuration deployment, serverless, blah, blah, blah. It's so good that Google just put several $1 million into the project, and Google doesn't like React because they have Angular. So when you look at a technology in the market and you see the competitors of that technology investing money in it, that's a pretty good test of whether or not it's something that you should put into your toolbox. So React, JavaScript, Next.js, there's no reason to go hunting for anything new. This stuff works, and it's lasted a while in the ecosystem, and this ecosystem is crazy. Tools get created, adopted, and dropped in less time than girls have boyfriends.
Yeah. Like, silly question, because I get this all the time. I know the answer, but a lot of people want to jump in right away into Next.js and skipping React. Like,
Next.js is React. They're not different. The difference is create React app, which is what people use when they're making React apps. This is not a production ready environment. It's client side rendering, which means your SEO is going to suck. It's client side rendering, which means there's no way to secure any of your server keys. So if you plan on using like Stripe or SendMail or anything where you're going to get API keys, those API keys will immediately be leaked into the source code, and anybody with a web
Yep.
browser with dev tools can look at your API keys and steal your API keys. So my advice is you don't have to learn Create React App. Create React App is a tool for
Right.
learning React and prototyping React, but it is not production ready. If you want to build something that you're actually going to deploy, just go straight to Next.js. It's not like you got to learn Next.js and you got to learn React. That's the same as saying, well, I got to learn JavaScript before I learn React. You don't. You can learn JavaScript by writing React, and you can learn React in the context of Next.js. If you don't
Right.
need the server shit right away, just ignore the pages.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, like, if you jump into the whole thing and using the server and stuff like that, I think for beginners, it might be complex, but it's true. You could still just do basic React without using all those additional features.
And I haven't put a video up in like 4 months because I got a new camera, I got a new microphone.
Yeah.
I'm working on telling a story in my videos rather than just doing a tutorial. So I'm hoping to have higher quality videos. The first series, I've already recorded like 5 of the episodes. It's on Next.js from the ground up, and it's not a focus on how to do everything in Next.js. It's here's how you make the best bare bones Next.js app you can.
Yeah.
So now you can just start all of your new projects that way. You don't have to figure out how to wire stuff up. It's just there for you. Then this is how then I'm going to rebuild all the Material UI components using that platform so that you can learn how easy it is to write your own components using Material UI as like a design tool instead of, downloading all those thousands of lines of JavaScript. So you'll learn Next.js. You'll learn how to build your own components the right way from the React way. By the way, thinking in React. Google it. Nobody reads that document. It's the most important document on the React documentation.
Yep.
If you follow that guide, you will go from zero to a launched React app in the least amount of time.
Yeah, I was going to say to you, what happened to Tailwind?
I love Tailwind. I use Tailwind for everything. There's no reason to write. Listen, sometimes you still need an escape hatch.
Didn't you just say Material UI just now? Didn't you just say Material UI though?
Material UI and Tailwind are completely different beasts.
I know, but didn't you just say you were talking in your Next.js using Material UI?
No, I'm showing you how to build those components without using Material
okay,
UI.
I gotcha. I just wanted to make that clear.
I
was about to say,
Bootstrap.
I was about to tell you, yeah. No, Tailwind is good. But what I was going to say though, like,
listen,
I know Next.js.
Hold on, I need to make this caveat. I'm not saying Material UI is the worst thing in the world. You still need to learn Material UI, just like you need to learn Redux, even though it sucks. And you need to learn TypeScript, even if I don't personally think it's the best tool out there.
Sometimes you even need to know Bootstrap.
And even Bootstrap, because you're going to go to a company and they're going to say, do you know X tool? And if you just say, no, I don't know Bootstrap because Bootstrap sucks, you don't get the job. If you say, yes, I know Bootstrap, I don't necessarily agree with the design philosophy of Bootstrap, and I think there are better alternatives. And then you can prove that you actually know how to use it and you have the experience to know why it's not the best tool, but you will use it because that's what the job wants, you'll get the job. If you go to the job and you say, Redux sucks, fuck you, if they use Redux, you don't get the job.
Here's one thing I'm going to say about Next.js. I've been using Next.js for personal projects, but at work, none of the like jobs that I had so far have been using Next.js. We've all been using React. So like if you learn React before learning Next.js, it's not going to hurt you. And I think like if you learn Next.js, like the routing is different.
They're not the same thing.
And the way that they have to. That's what I'm saying.
But they're not the same thing. You're talking about like comparing Tailwind to Material UI. They're completely different tool sets. Material UI and Tailwind aren't the same thing. React and Next.js aren't the same.
But what I'm saying is that
there's no learning Next.js without learning React. You can learn React without learning Next.js.
Right. So that was my point, is that a lot of beginners jump into Next.js first, and they get.
Which I don't think is a bad idea, because think of the 1,000 things that you have to decide if you're going to spin up your own Node, Express, React app.
Yep.
And you go down a month of installing NPM packages and wiring up middleware and being totally lost with the Webpack configuration. Or you go straight to Next.js. You could forget about all of that wiring up all of the middleware and installing all of those packages and just start building your app.
Yeah, but the issue is that some jobs they do React and they expect you to know React Router. They expect you to know Redux because that's what they're working for. So what I'm saying is that I love Next.js, let me say that. And I wish like I had
But
more
you can still
opportunity.
do all that in the context of Next.js.
Right, you can. I still think for beginners, I have a hard, for me, like, because I know React, Next.js makes sense. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
let's
but
say you learn Next.js
from
and you
that,
go
you
at a
would say that
company.
you would have to know JavaScript before you learn React.
You, well, you should know JavaScript
No.
before you learn React.
No.
Bro,
I don't
come
agree.
on. Come on.
I don't agree.
Listen, let me
Because
just
look,
say this
if you
first.
learn
Hold on.
JavaScript
Let me say this first.
you could
Let-
spend 4 years learning bad
wait,
habits in
Let me,
JavaScript
right. So let me say
before you
this.
learn
Like,
React.
I think you need to know basics of JavaScript before you can learn React. But I don't say you should spend 4 years. Like the best decision I made once I knew the basic syntax of JavaScript, I transitioned to React right away because I was able to be productive really, really quickly. But you still, because I see so many
Well,
people
then
who
why not
just,
build your own compiler before you learn JavaScript? Where did the turtles end?
right. I mean, you could make that argument forever.
Which is why I don't
keep
make that
going down.
argument.
Yeah.
I don't listen. If you look at the search results for Ruby, and you look at the search results for Ruby on Rails, like the search index, like the amount of searches over time from Google, what you see is a graph that looks like this. The top is Ruby, the bottom is Ruby on Rails, and they go like this, and then they go like this, and they die together.
Yeah.
And that's because people did not pick up Ruby until Ruby on Rails came on the scene, because Ruby on Rails was the killer app that made Ruby relevant. And Ruby rose and died with Ruby on Rails. In my opinion,
Yeah, Tech Rally here
React and JavaScript and Next.js is the exact same pattern.
No, I get it.
Learn the future by looking at the past. So you can totally start with Next.js, and you can learn React and JavaScript in the context of Next.js, and you will learn 20% of the total thing that you would need to know if you wrote everything by scratch. And that 20% will make you a better JavaScript programmer than if you focus on 100% of the JavaScript.
Yeah, Tech Rally like says he thinks it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea also, and I think like to be fair, and I totally get your point, but I think like when I say a beginner developer, like in your mind, like because you've been a developer for such a long time, you're able to make these connections much easier. But someone who's like brand new, I don't think that like the fact that like there's certain things that Next.js, yeah, you could use out of the box just like you would use React. But there are certain things that you do in Next.js that you don't do in React. You know, and
right,
I think it's like
convention over configuration, which is actually a good programming practice. Create React app is configuration over convention, which is a bad practice.
Yes, but like as a beginner developer, you don't even know that. You know what I'm saying? You're just trying to get something going, and like I don't know. Like for me, like I'm glad I did React first and then went to Next.js.
You keep separating the two. You can't write Next.js without React.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You have to learn React first.
No, you don't.
Just like,
I got 25 years on you. No, you don't.
no, I know you do, but I'm just saying I think like I get it. I'm just saying
do you
myself.
have to know how to fix an engine before you drive a car?
Listen, you should know what an engine is.
No, you don't. Nobody knows what an engine is, and they all can drive cars.
No, like you need one. Like, okay, you should at least know to put oil into your engine so you don't blow it. That's
Listen,
what I'm going to say.
If you bought a car in the 1970s, in the manual, it told you how to change your transmission fluid, how to adjust the valves, and all of that stuff. You know what the manual says for a new car? Don't touch the fucking engine.
Yes,
because
okay.
it's not a simple thing anymore. If you even want your oil change, you need to take it to a professional oil change provider now. You shouldn't change your own oil in your own car if you buy a brand new car, because of the electronics, the fuel injection systems. All these things are just too complicated for the average driver. If you own a Tesla, you don't have to know how to do any of that. You just drive the Tesla. Next.js is the Tesla.
Yeah, I totally get it, but I see so many developers that jump to Next.js and they get confused. You know what I mean? That's the only reason I say it.
You get confused when you jump into React. You get confused when you jump into JavaScript. This shit's hard.
Yeah, it is, but I still think like you say, you can't have Next.js without React, and I say at least do one React create app to get started, and then jump into Next.js. Like I love Next.js, but like knowing how retarded I was, like just the fact
You're going to
that
be lost either way. So you should be lost working with a more relevant technology than a less relevant technology. Create React App is
there's
not
so
a
many.
production ready. Create React App is not a production ready framework. So
No,
when
yeah,
you're
I get
building
it.
Create React apps, you're learning how to build, you're learning how to prototype React, and then you're trying to put that into the real world, and you've just broken every rule in security, and you put up something that's completely unusable for most people because you get served a blank page, and then you have to wait for the React to hydrate and then build all the DOM. Meanwhile,
All
you're
right.
sitting on your phone with a
So
blank page and a bunch of
he has
spinners everywhere.
look. Mark has a good point though. If you're learning Next.js, you will learn React as you go along, and it's much quicker. Bro,
Hold on.
let me know when
Ted
you
Brelly
get your
asks, how
Next.js
can you
job.
learn React before knowing JS? It's this simple. When you were a kid and you were learning English from watching TV and watching your parents' mouths move, you did not have to know the syntax of English. You did not have to know the history of English. You did not have to know regional dialects of English to learn English. You learn English in the environment that you were in, and that's how you can learn React without knowing JavaScript. This is all of JavaScript. Am I on the screen? This is all of JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah,
is the good part of JavaScript.
yeah.
There is no reason to learn this part of JavaScript. It's a bunch of garbage that's been cobbled together by people
Yeah.
that don't actually have any interest in JavaScript. If you learn how to write React using hooks and functional components, you will only learn how to write 20% of JavaScript, but it's the good 20% of
Yeah,
JavaScript.
yeah.
And if you can learn how to write the good stuff in 20% of the time of learning how to write a whole bunch of crap in 80% of the time, it's the Pareto equation: 80, 20, everything. 20% of JavaScript is good, 80% of JavaScript is bad. If you learn JavaScript in the context of React, you will learn the 20% first. If you learn JavaScript in the context of jQuery, you will learn the 80% first.
So, what do you say like to people that in their areas all they have is React jobs and none of them are working with Next.js?
There's no separation. It's not the argument that makes sense. There's no separation. That would be like saying I'm going to write React, but I'm not going to use Create React App. I'm just going to learn React. Because remember, Create
No,
React App
listen.
and React are not the same thing.
Yeah, like I mean,
So do
then
you know
why
how
do
to
people
build
ask you need
hold
to
on.
know React router?
Do you know
and
how to build a
Redux?
React app without using Create React App?
How
The
to
answer is
start create React without Create React app using
Yes.
Webpack? Yeah, you could.
Listen, React is a framework. It's technically a library.
It is a
Create
library.
React App is a tool. It is not a language. It is not a library. It is not a
Yeah,
framework.
yeah.
So
yeah, I
you
get
can
it.
learn React without knowing Create React App, right?
Yeah, you can.
So why didn't you do that?
I did. I used Webpack to compile everything
So
together.
you built your own Webpack configuration.
I had to suffer through it. I watched a
Well,
lot of
why?
tutorials.
But why?
I said the same question after the fact.
You know
After
how
the
many
fact, I
Webpack
was like,
configurations I've written in the last 5 years?
Not a lot.
None. Because it's
Yeah,
not
'cause
neat.
you-
It's busy work.
Right,
So
it
my
is.
point
I agree
is-
with you. I agree with you.
When you build a React app, you're using the Create React App tool, right?
Now, yeah, it's easier.
Okay. Why?
And now you could use
Why don't you just spin everything up manually?
because it's easier.
Because it's easier. And Next.js is even easier than Create React App, and it's production ready, which Create React App is not.
I get that. I get all that. I agree with you 100% on everything you're saying, except the fact that I still think for new beginners, they need to know their history through at least suffering through Create React App.
Well, then you would have to
before
start
moving
them with
to
C.
Next.js.
And
Right.
then you'd have to
And
start
I
them
did
with
do
the
C,
template.
by the way. So like, I did do C programming just because I'm that type of person, you know. No, I
But
totally
my point is
find-
you don't have to start with C to know JavaScript.
No,
and
I
you
get
don't have to start with JavaScript to know
So
React.
I think like
And you
let
don't
me
have to
just-
learn HTML and then learn CSS and then learn JavaScript. Learning is not linear. You learn
No,
as much
but
HTML as
listen,
you need,
I
as much
yeah.
CSS as you need, and as much JavaScript as you need, to get the job done that you're trying to get done, because
Yeah,
your
so
job should not just be to learn something. Your job should be to actually complete something or build something.
oh yeah,
You
100%,
learn in the
100%.
context of
Yeah.
your goal.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I guess like the reason why I'm so passionate about it is that because I saw with React, and I don't want that to be wasted time that I spent learning. But no, Next.js is definitely
Harold
amazing.
Jones says someone knows Next but gets tested in straight React, then what? There's no separation. You can't write Next without writing React.
But
So the question is, if you get tested in create React app versus Next.js, what
Yeah.
happens? Well, you should be able to explain that create React app is not the same as React. If you don't even know that, then you're not even at a junior level.
yeah, why have they asked you to implement routing in React and then explain the difference of how routing
But
works
you
in
should
Next.js?
still be able to do that, and you should be able to say,
So
here
you
is
need
why.
to know React.
Hold on. You should be able to create a browser router using just regular React. And then you should be able to explain why declarative routing, which is what you have in Next.js,
Yeah.
is better than configuration routing, which is what you have in Create React App. That will get you the job more than just saying,
Right.
okay, well, look, I can build a bunch of legacy software that nobody
Right.
uses.
But the point is you need to know React. So you could talk about the routing. You know what I'm saying?
It's like
That's
saying
the
you
whole
got to
point.
learn how to use an oven before you learn how to cook. No, you learn how to
You
use
need
an
to know
oven in the
both.
context of learning how to cook.
Right. So I think this guy says it best. You guys saying the same exact thing. The things you say, learn it all before. Hold on, my cats are going crazy. Hey, stop.
Let's do some code.
Yeah.
I'm not
yeah.
a fan of talking about things in a theoretical. I'm a fan of talking about things.
No,
in
I know. By the way, guys, like before we go on this crazy thing, if you never watched DevMentorLive videos, by the way, one of the hardest things to do is to do coding live. And this is how I know this man knows his stuff. All our disagreement aside, is because he'll just do live coding like nobody's business. Can you share your screen? Yeah, do it. Show us some examples. Let's do this. Bro, I appreciate it.
Here. So you guys, you see my terminal?
Yeah,
You're gonna have to make me full screen, unfortunately.
Of course. Anything. Hold on a sec. I just gotta figure out how to do that shit. Here you go, buddy. You're all set.
All right, so I'm just
See,
gonna.
this is what I want to do. Thank you. This is what took you so long to say this, Mark?
Because I feel now like I've taken over your show.
Listen.
So here's what I'm gonna
bro,
do, because I want to
invited
explain
on
what
the
I'm
show
gonna
for a
do
reason.
before I start doing it. I'm gonna have two tabs open. I'm gonna do Create React App in one tab, and simultaneously in a second tab, I'm gonna run a Create Next App. Okay, so we're gonna be doing the exact same thing in both frameworks. So of course we're going to use npx because I don't want to have to install whatever the most recent version of Create React App is. Create-React-App, and we're just going to call it Poly. Well,
But if you don't know React, how do you know to do that?
this is not a React command. This is an npm command.
I
So
know,
again,
just-
you're arguing about the turtles all the way down to the chicken before the egg. Okay,
Yep.
so there it goes. That's the Create React App. Here's a new tab. Do you see the new tab? Yes, we see the new tab. We're going to go into my dev folder, and we're going to do npx.
Christopher
Create
says he has
Next
a good
app.
point. Learning is not linear. You have a fan. I love it.
Next.js. Whoops. Let me see if I can spell it right.
Chris is enjoying the show. He's saying this is action packed. Thanks, Christopher, for being here, by the way. No, dude, I love Dev Mentor. I love Mark. So, I love having these conversations because it brings out important points for all of us to learn from. And this is good stuff.
And it gives me more time to drink more whiskey.
There you go.
I have a broken foot, so this is completely medicinal. I was in
Dude,
the
how'd you break
right-hand
your
lane
foot?
on my motorcycle with my wife behind me.
Oh, there you go.
And there was a car in the
man.
left-hand lane. And if you think people drive shitty in your country, come to Mexico.
I've been to Mexico.
The laws are optional. So he's in the left lane in his Prius, and I'm in the right lane on my motorcycle. He turns from the left lane through the right lane to go down a side street, and he T-bones me, and he drives my ankle from his door, the ball of my ankle, into the engine casing on my motorcycle and fractured it in 5 places. Tomorrow I get surgery. They're going to put a bunch of titanium pins in it and put a big cast on it. So this is 100% medicinal. Don't do what I do, kids. Do as I
Dude,
say. So check
I've
this
seen
out.
how-
Number one, create next app is done in about 4 seconds, and create React app is still way behind. This is just
You got
creating
slow
the damn
internet.
thing.
Slow internet.
It's not slow internet. It's the same machine. It's
No,
the same
I'm just
internet. It's two
pass on.
projects.
Yeah.
So just for the horse race, if you can if you can start writing code to get closer to releasing a production app so that you can generate revenue faster than slower, I would say the metric is the faster that you can get to building the shit you want to build and not doing all the setup and get to revenue as fast as possible, that's a win. Would you agree?
Right, 100%. I agree with you, and I know this about like Next.js. And I was gonna say, like you keep saying, Next.js is complete, where React is just it's not a production app, but you have to add a lot of stuff to make it work, which is true. But
Okay.
yeah, definitely
So
keep going
you
with
say
your
it's
example.
more complete as an agreement to my case that it's more complete. But doesn't that seem counterintuitive that the thing that is more complete takes less time to create an application than the thing that's incomplete? Next.js is done. Here's Create React App. We're still way, way behind. So Create React App is not for production, and it's not quote unquote complete, and it's still not done installing, and I can already start coding in my Create React App.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I still think
So
people
1
should
point to
know their
Next.js.
history. When you
And
go
now
on
I'm gonna have
React.org, they don't
to-
tell you to learn Next.js first.
What's that?
I said on React.org, when you go on, they don't show you start with Next.js. They show you start with Create React App, the easiest
yeah.
way to start building a React application.
If I'm a bread store, I want you to buy my bread, not the next door neighbor's bread. It doesn't matter
Right.
if their bread is better.
But you can't have bread without the wheat that React
Sure you can.
is.
It's called gluten-free bread.
Jesus.
Californians love it.
I love this. This has been by far the best podcast. I love the excitement. I love the back and forth. What happened to your terminal?
I'm switching over to code, and
Okay.
with OBS, I have to actually
Gotcha. Just want to make sure that.
select the
Yeah,
right
'cause
window.
I do want people to see you in action, just to kind of show, like
So
some
I
stuff.
think that's the right one. There we go. That's the right one. Okay. Whoa, I don't want to open up that folder. 1 second. CDN2, what did I call it? Paul. Next. Always open up your Visual Studio Code in the actual project root. If you
Yep.
open it up in like a root that's shared from other things, then everything will run a lot slower. And I see people do this all the time. So now VS Code and OBS should be aligned. Yep. Okay. So real quick, just the biggest difference between Next.js and Create React App is this. First off, the folder structure for both when you first install it sucks. It's not meant to be the best folder structure and file naming structure. It's meant to be the lowest common denominator for people who don't know what the hell they're doing, because both tools want the largest user base possible. Okay?
Yep.
So whether I'm using Create React App or whether I'm using Next.js, the first thing I have to do is fix a bunch of really bad decisions. First thing, if you're looking at a file that looks like this, and you look at something that looks like HTML in your JavaScript, this is a Reese's peanut butter cup. This is not chocolate. This has chocolate and peanut butter. If it has chocolate and peanut butter, i.e. it has JavaScript and it has HTML, for the love of God, don't name it .js, because then your editor, if you look down here, it thinks it's JavaScript, and it's not JavaScript. It's JavaScript XML. So the first thing that'll save you a lot of trouble in your development, just name it the right thing. If you have a PNG,
JSX.
don't name it a JPEG. It's not correct. It's not true. Just don't do it. As soon as I change it to JSX, now it says it's JavaScript React. This means all of my snippets for JavaScript React will now just work, whereas before they won't. I'm not going to do all the semantic stuff that I usually do. I'm going to do a video on this so you can see it on my thing, but I am going to get rid of the CSS because global CSS is a terrible idea. Real quick, I've been doing CSS since CSS existed. The problem with CSS is the C. It's called cascading. And what this means is that your whole site uses basically a single style sheet. Even if you got like 20 style sheets, they're all compressed together into a single style sheet. When you do that, you don't have control over which styles are loaded first and which styles are loaded second. They all just get jammed together. And based on the specificity of your CSS, they will get applied to your HTML. So the rule comes down from the boss. It's like, hey, I like the way this page looks, but can you change the styles so that it looks like this? And you make the changes, but because of the cascading aspect, you just affected 100 pages in the site that you didn't mean to affect, and then your boss fires you because you broke the site. So the first thing, global CSS, terrible idea. We're going to get rid of it. You could say, well,
you don't like using Sass? Because I remember you talked about this. You do like namespace for your CSS, and you don't like to use Sass. Is that?
I don't use Sass because it doesn't serve a purpose anymore. It served a purpose when CSS didn't have its own variables. But
okay.
that's beside the point. My point is the CSS, the C is the problem. So styled components will get rid of the C in CSS, but then you have a bunch of CSS inside of your JavaScript file. And since you already have a bunch of HTML inside of your JavaScript file, having all this extra HTML and the first 500 lines of your file is a bunch of styled component CSS crap, it makes it confusing because you open up your component and you expect to see your component and all you see is CSS. So I don't like styled components personally, but they're still better than regular CSS. What I like are CSS modules. In CSS modules, you can have a CSS file, but when you import it into a component, it adds, like, it puts an automatic extra couple of characters onto the class name so that you can guarantee that if you were to change the CSS for that component, it will only affect that component. So if you've got CSS styles for your main menu and you make changes in your CSS module for the main menu, you can guarantee it's not going to change the paragraph tags in the About Us page. Okay? So I'm just going to delete that. CSS folder, gone completely. I'm not going to go through the process of setting up Tailwind, etc. But I will say this. If you create a project, this is one place where I think Create React App gets it right. Look, Create React App is still installing the new project. Okay, so
dude, I have no idea what you did. Ridiculous. You must have misspelled something.
No, I didn't. It's installing.
This takes forever. Jesus Christ.
Create React App installs a bunch of stuff that you don't need.
Listen, tomorrow I'm gonna run that test. By the way, you know what?
Sure.
We should do,
always run tests. Always verify. Never do assumptions. As Quentin Tarantino says, assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups.
What I want to do, because it's actually very convenient how Next.js has routing. Let's show what you have to do for routing in Next.js.
But first I'm gonna.
I know you want to clean it up, and then do the same thing. Yep, and then do the same thing in React.
Puts all of your source code files inside of an SRC folder. Next.js doesn't do that out of the box, but you'll notice the first thing I did, I created an SRC folder. I put all my pages inside of there because you want to separate out what is a static part of your site and what is the source of your site. So I created an SRC folder. I put all the pages folder in here. Create React App is still installing. As soon as it's done installing, I will create a browser router in there, and I'll show you how to do routing. So first off, I'm not going to show you server side, so we can just delete that API folder. It doesn't matter. Then I'm going to take my index.js file. We're going to fix it. That's index.jsx. Because if you look at it, you can see it clearly has HTML inside of it. Then I'm going to delete all the boilerplate because that is not built for you. That is somebody else's code. You don't want somebody else's code. I'm going to change home to home page. And the reason is inside of Next.js, you know how in Create React App, there's a components folder and you just stick all the shit in component.
Yeah.
The problem with that is not organization. That is equivalent to your 8-year-old self when your mom comes in and you got all your Legos on the floor, all your puzzles on the floor, all your board games on the floor, your Nintendo shit is scattered all over the shit, and she says, clean up your room, and what do? You push half of it under your bed, you push half of it in your closet. That's a components folder. Components folder is like calling your dog. It doesn't give you any extra information. So in React, everything's in the components folder. In Next.js, they give you a folder called pages. That's because the components inside of the pages folder are special. They mean that if you create pages/admin, and then inside of here you create a file called index.js, if you go to /admin, The route already exists to go to this component. I don't have to create a router to say, well, if you go to admin / whatever, then I'm going to load this component or I'm going to load that component. It's declarative, meaning that it's built off of your folder
Now,
structure.
quick question for you. What do you stick styling for pages? Do you do it the same way as you would do for a component? Do you put it somewhere different? Like the
The
CSS
styles,
file?
listen, you guys all know what encapsulation is in programming?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the concept of don't have your shit scattered all over. Have nice atomic things, whatever you want to call them, components, folders, classes, structure, modules, whatever. You need to have some piece of structure, and all of the internals to that structure should be wrapped nicely inside. So think about an engine for a minute. Let's just think about like an old engine, because the old engines are simpler. You have an engine case. Inside of there, there's all these moving parts and all this technology that you don't understand. But it's all inside of the engine case, so you don't have to know about any of that to drive the car. That is encapsulation. So your styles for a component, whether it's a page, a feature, a building block, an atom, whatever the division is, your styles should be inside of the component itself. Meaning if I'm on page admin / appointment / create, for creating a brand new appointment at DevMentorLive, if I want to change the styles for that page, I would expect to open up the admin folder, the appointments folder, the create folder, and inside of that create folder, I'll have the component file, which will be index.jsx, and I'll have my styles inside of there too. So basically, you don't have like a components folder where all your component files are, a modules folder where all of your JavaScript is minus the React, a CSS folder where all your CSS files are, because then what happens is you're in the feature called, say, login. When I want to change the styles for login, I now have to navigate up into my thing, go into the style sheet, find the right style sheet, open that up, make the change, close the style sheet, navigate back down into my components folder, go back down into the thing that I was already in, open that up, and then I see, oh, well, I've also got this helper.js file. So now I have to go back up to modules, and I have to go deep into modules and find.
Here's a argument for you here. What you're describing is not React specific.
It's not. It's just programming.
It's specific
it's
to
a concept of
encapsulation.
Routing. The thing, whatever it is, a component, a module, a class, it should have
I get
all
that
of the
part.
things that it needs within reach. If you can just reach out and grab the thing you need, and reach out and grab the thing you need, you're going to be much more productive than if every time you're in your shop, you have to go out to the garage, and then you have to go out to the truck, and then you have to go out to the kitchen, and then you come back to your shop to work.
Yeah, no, that I get.
Your file should be right here.
Yeah.
So check this out. They create this underscore app.jsx file. All of your pages get rendered through this special higher order component. But because it's named as a file, there is no place to put CSS that is for your app globally. So this is where my case comes in. Don't make your components files. Make them folders. Folders go back to the 1970s. This is not new technology. Underscore app, drag the app component inside of there, rename it to index.jsx because that is the entry point. Anytime you have a folder, if you say require or import something from app, your program will automatically look for an index file and it will use the index file. You don't have to say import app from app/app or import app from app/index. I don't know why everybody does that. It's ridiculous. So now I've got this folder for my component instead of a file. Now, if I wanted to have a globals.css file here that are for like site-wide stuff, I can say, like, here's my root. And for my root, maybe I want the base font size to be 16 pixels, which is most of the browser default, so that's fine. And then I can just say import globals.css. When I know that I'm working in this and I want to change the globals that go with the component, look at how far I have to move my mouse. It's literally just a couple of centimeters. It's actually 1 centimeter. Rather than going up to a folder, opening up the folder, trying to scroll around, figure out which is the right thing. It should just
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay. So I wonder, has create React app finally finished? It has. Okay. So cd Paul code dot. Now, If I put this in the same place, we should see both depending on which one I'm focused on. Do we see that? Yes. Okay, so here's your Create React app. 5 minutes late to the party, but it's here. I like the fact that things are inside of an SRC folder. That's a good step. Your public folder, which is static, it should be separate from your SRC. But look at all this extra boilerplate garbage that has nothing to do with your app. You're not here to advertise for React. So there's no reason your favicon should be a React favicon. Inside of your SRC, here's the problems that I see with this structure. Everything is its own file. So look, app.js, app.css. Why are those not inside of a folder to have proper encapsulation? And then you got this app.test.js. Then you got this index. Like there's another separation here. You see index twice. Just have a folder called index. Put both those files in there.
Yep.
Again, you got this logo SVG. This is not your logo. This is shit that comes from React. Report web vitals. You don't need to be slowing down your app to be reporting stuff back to the Create React app team. So the first step here, delete.
Delete.
Delete. Get rid of all that crap because it's not for you. It wasn't built for you. What you care about is this one. But again, it's not named right. Index.jsx. Now let's get rid of all this extra stuff. We are going to have an app component, but it's going to be lowercase. The component has an uppercase because it's a naming convention for JavaScript that if your function creates its own state or has the keyword new in front of it, then you uppercase the thing. Otherwise, it's camel case. There's no reason to make the folder uppercase. No reason at all. If anybody can give me a good reason why the file naming should be the same thing as your JavaScript, then you would write Ruby, Python, JavaScript, C, and your variable names would always look the same. They'd always be camel case, snake case, whatever it is.
Yeah. And
that's not good programming. Good programming means your Ruby variables look like Ruby variables. Your Python variables look like Python variables. Your JavaScript variables should look like JavaScript variables. It's called idiomatic coding. So we get rid of the report vitals. And so now you get this React strict mode, which is very useful. You should definitely include that. And then you've got your app component, which is going to be passed to the React DOM and render. You'll notice that you don't see any of this in Next.js because it's just boilerplate. You don't need it. It's not something that you even edit. Now we're going to go into here. We're just going to create an app folder. We're going to create a index.jsx for our app. My advice is create your own snippets. So when I type RC, I get the default for a React component. It's always going to be a function component. Don't write ES6 classes. ES6 classes were put into the JavaScript spec by the Microsoft team who does C# and by the Java team who does Java so that they could make JavaScript more messy to make it nicer to C# developers and Java developers. I'm sorry, I don't give a shit about Java developers and C# developers. I want my JavaScript to be a lean, mean, powerful language, not to make it a worse. Listen, perfection is by removing all the things that aren't needed. It's not by adding everything under the sun. So I would prefer JavaScript to have less things in it that work well rather than a whole bunch of stuff that was made for people that I don't care about. If you're a JavaScript programmer, great, you're part of my tribe. If you're a C# programmer, hey, we're still programmers, so I still like you. But I spent years doing C#. I don't want to deal with C#. I don't want to have to be influenced by C#. I spent years doing Java development. I don't want to write in Java, and I don't want to be influenced by Java. So write functional components. If you write ES6 classes, you have to worry about lifecycle events. The lifecycle events are constantly being changed by the React team. So today it's component will mount. Tomorrow they're going to tell you, no, component will mount is bad. You're going to use component did mount. They're going to tell you, oh no, component did mount is unsafe. So now you have to mark it as unsafe, blah, blah, blah. If you just use function components, you don't have to worry about any of those lifecycle events. You also don't have to worry about arrow functions and the binding context where you have to have a constructor and then you have to say, when I call this function, it's not bound to this keyword, which also won't exist if you're using functional components. This keyword is the most complex thing in JavaScript. If you never have to type this, if you never have to type this,
nowadays everybody's doing functional stuff. Like most people don't even know classes. Yeah, and they should, 100%. But I'm saying like a lot of people
if you look at most of the React code out there that's even just 1 year
Oh,
old, it's
it's class based. Yeah, yeah. I
And
haven't in past 2 years. I've
again,
been writing all functional
yes. But here's the
and
thing.
refactoring.
The caveat is always going to be the same with me. If I say something sucks, it doesn't mean don't learn it. It means don't use it. If I say don't write ES6 classes, it means don't write ES6 classes. But you should still do some of your own coding where you're using ES6 classes so that you can understand how to do it for an interview. And then you can explain to the interviewer why it sucks. Because if you just tell an interviewer, I don't write CSS or I don't write ES6 classes because they suck, you just lost a job. If you tell the interviewer, I can write an ES6 class, but here and here and here and here is why it's a bad idea, you now show that you have a deeper knowledge into the subject and you're not just being, well, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, so I hate
and that's 100%.
Okay,
that's 100%.
So we have our app component here, and I'll just throw a div in here, and we're just going to put an H1 in there, and we're going to say, hello, create React app. We'll do the same thing with Next.js. Not that, that's my project. 1 second. In my spare time, I'm always writing code for my own purposes. And that's how you get good at programming. You got to write your own code all the time. If you want to get good at drinking, drink every day. It's probably not advisable, but at least you won't do something stupid at a party because you'll have a tolerance. If you want to be a good coder, you got to code every day. Okay, so here's the difference. We got the same thing. We got hello, create next app. What is the difference between the two? The main difference is the fact that we have to build a router. So here's our app. Here's our app. We can't just go straight into our actual page. We have to first build a router. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. One of the ways is to put your router in the index.jsx file so that you're not dirtying up your app component.
Here, wait. Right now, you're currently in the React application, correct?
Yeah. If you see React DOM render,
yeah. Let's do it the other way.
Let's get our terminology right. They are both React applications. This is the create React application.
Yeah. Start from Next.js. Do routing with Next.js.
No. I'm in charge here.
No, but I'm saying it'll be easier to show that example.
Okay. Why? Yes, but in order to show the example of why Next.js is better, I first have to show you what's worse.
No, but you got to at least explain to people
router
that
DOM.
Okay, then explain to people why you're doing React router DOM. No, I want you to code, but tell people why you're doing React router DOM.
I'm trying to tell them, but you're interrupting a lot. So listen, I'm going to first show you what I think is the inefficient way, and then I'll show you why the efficient way is better and why it's easier because you have to write less code, you have to know less things.
Okay, let me ask a quick question. Is React router DOM part of React?
It is, but it's a separate library. You have to install it.
Right, and that's the whole point of the argument why Next.js is better. But I want people to know that.
Point. Let me make the points for Next.js, and you can make the points for Create React App. Okay.
Dude, I love Next.js. My points is for Next.js.
We also have to have switch. The two things work together. The browser router just means that whatever you have in the router, in the URL of your browser, right, like /page, /admin/login, you're going to have a route that will say if you're at /admin/login, you're going to load X component. The switch component is essentially what you wrap your routes inside of it. And it's essentially a case statement in the background to say, if this route matches, use this component. If this route matches, use that component. We don't have that installed. So I have to come over here and I'm going to do Yarn because I'll just do it in NPM. I used to use Yarn exclusively because Yarn used to be 75% faster than NPM. That is no longer the case. So I don't really have a great argument of why Yarn is better than NPM, except that with NPM you have to type NPM run whatever.
Yep.
In Yarn you just have to type yarn whatever, but 3 letters is not a reason to choose a technology. So it used to be Yarn was faster. That's not the case anymore. So I've kind of switched back to NPM because if you can use something that's built into the technology, there's no reason to reach for something outside of the technology unless it's significantly better. Since it's no longer significantly better, I'm fine with using NPM. So NPM I, React Router DOM, and I didn't do a -D because it's not a development dependency. i.e. something that will never work in production, only in the development. This is something that has to be in your production code. Then I can wrap. So what browser router is under the hood, browser router is what's called a provider. A provider is part of React context that says that the context will be available inside of any components that are inside of that provider. So the provider for our routes is going to be provided by this browser router. Come on. We're going to wrap our app inside of the browser router, which means that our app will always have access to the context that's provided with this browser router. Then what we want to do is we want to have some sort of a switch command. The switch command is going to actually allow us to say, when you're at route X, go to component Y. So we'll also create a route, which means we also need to have our route. And at some point, if you've got lots and lots and lots of routes because your website gets big, this gets to be really unmanageable really fast. And then you have, okay, well, I've got my master router, and then I've got these sub routers for all these subsystems, and you end up with router inside of router inside of router inside of router. And if you can do that with folders, why not just do it with folders, which is why I think declarative routing is better. So we're going to say that there's a path here. In the path, I'm just going to use the login. So admin /login. Inside of here, I know I'm going to need an admin login component. My way of doing things is do the implementation first, or sorry, the expression first. Don't start with the implementation, which is like, I need to build a component. So I start building the component first, and then I put the component on the page. Don't do it from the bottom up, because you might build the wrong thing. Do it from the top down. Top down is, I know I need this component, so I'm going to just pretend that the component exists. I'm going to put it on the page. Then I'll know what properties I need to have, because I'm right here and I'm doing it right now. And then this will become my blueprint for how I actually build the component. So over here, src, we're just going to create a folder called admin. We're going to create a folder called login. We're going to create a file called index.jsx. This means that if we have any special style sheets, any images, any SVGs, any extra like subcomponents, they can all be neatly encapsulated inside of our login component. And apparently I'm typing too fast. Okay. So my naming preference is simple. They say naming is one of the hardest things in programming. I don't agree. But part of that is probably because I talk my ass off, right? So for me, coming up with words is not difficult. But what I find, the simplest way to have easy to read code is to have conventions and parity. Parity, P-R-I-T-Y, not parody like, you're making fun of some shit. So if I have a folder called admin and a folder called login, and I'm looking at this component, I can display that exact information by naming my component admin login. When I'm in this folder or in this component, I don't have to look over here to figure out where the hell I am on the map. I know I'm in admin login because these two things have been concatenated together. So I'm just going to have an input field here. And that's because we're going to have, some sort of a value. We're going to have some sort of an on change that we have access to, like the username, password, email, whatever scheme you're going to use. So again, I'm not worried about the implementation first. I'm putting the thing on the page that I wish that I had that exists. It doesn't exist. I know it needs a value. I know it needs an on change, but you'll notice I didn't create the state yet, and I didn't create the function yet. And I know that this is going to have a placeholder of maybe enter your email. We'll just say we don't have usernames, we have emails. So if I was to save this and just do npm run start, I think, for create React app. What I want to do is it's like test-driven development. You got red, green, refactor. I do that as a process of development without actually writing tests anymore. I'm going to let the browser be my test environment because I don't have to build it. It's already there. It already exists. If I put this onto the page, and if I go to /admin/login, and I get an error related to the fact that I didn't provide a value and I didn't provide a function, that is the red part of the red-green refactor. Let me make sure that my Chrome is showing up. Sorry, not Chrome, Firefox. I only work in Firefox. And let me make sure it's the right
Is
size.
that because they have better CSS tools?
In general, the web tools, yeah, in Firefox are better. CSS definitely better, hands down. But I also prefer the interface for like the storage and the networking and some other stuff.
Okay.
All right, so we have our window in OBS. You guys see that?
Yeah, it says admin's not.
Okay, so right here, here's
blah, blah, blah.
my red, and look, it's useful. Red, red, red. So it's just like test-driven development. I already have a red test. Admin login is not defined. So how do I rectify that? I say, okay, well, where is it complaining about? It's complaining in this file right here. And that's because I have a component that I have not imported. So I'm going to import it. And because we're working create React app, not create next app, I have to do relative paths all the way down. So it's dot slash, forward slash, blah, blah, blah. And then you need to move something somewhere and you have to change all those references. And you can have Visual Studio Code do it for you. But in my experience, computers are stupid. And when you say automatically update all my imports, half the time it does it wrong. And then you have 100 files that you got to edit. So for me, listen, here's the other thing. If you're a programmer, your favorite tool or your best friend going forward in the future is artificial intelligence. But it is also your worst enemy because the artificial intelligence eventually will replace poor programmers. It's not going to replace me.
Yep.
But if you have a low level of expertise, artificial intelligence will replace you before it replaces me because it's going to need me to write the artificial intelligence that will then write itself so that it can be better than you, but it's still not going to be better. Like, I'm not religious, right? But if God created the world, who created God? The senior programmer created God, and then God created the world, okay? So you don't want to be the creation, you want to be the creator. So import admin login from, let's see where we're at. We're in the root, so ./admin. Now look, I don't have to say admin/index. I just say admin/login, and I don't have to say admin/login/index because the index is already implied. Now we have a new red test.
Can you show everybody where? I just got a quick question because I know you set it up on your VS Code. What is that option that you use to make sure that in tabs it doesn't have that index, but it shows the folder so people don't get confused?
Fair question. So one of the pushbacks that I get from my naming convention is, well, if everything is named index and everything is named styles.css, how do you know where you are based on the tabs? If you go in here and you type the word label, you will find Workbench Editor label format. Set it to short or medium if you really want to see, like the full path. For me, the way my naming convention works, the short path works well because it tells me this is the index.js in the src folder. This is the index.js in the login folder, in the app folder. So it will tell me where it is, and then I can just go with that. So now it's telling me that we didn't provide a JavaScript expression for the value. So now I actually have to bring some state in. So we're going to import useState because we need to have a place to store what the people are typing into the field. Now you could use refs, but refs should always be the last resort in React because it sidesteps the virtual DOM. Refs is equivalent to the jQuery days where we were directly modifying the DOM. So generally, we reserve using refs for things like if you're going to tell a text box imperatively, meaning I'm not asking you for your value, I'm telling you what to do. That's imperative. Functional is I'm asking you for the value. If you're going to be getting the value of something, do it functionally, i.e. with state. If you're telling something imperatively like focus this checkbox, then you would use a ref. Don't use refs to get your form state. So import useState from React. Now, again, I've got snippets for these. My advice for you is do not install a whole shitload of extensions in React in VS Code because they will start fighting with each other. And every extension that you install in React or in VS Code will run slower, and then they'll start conflicting with each other, and then you're going to spend ages trying to figure out why the hell your VS Code isn't working right. So what I advise is if you actually go into code preferences user snippets, and you type the language that you're working with, Write your own snippets, because if you install the React snippets, you're going to get 1,000 snippets that you're never going to use, and that slows down your machine. And every time you type something, you got autocomplete with like 20 options. I always use create React component, create React local state, create React effect, and that's basically it. So I have 3 things that work well for my workflow. They do exactly what I want them to do. And if something breaks, because I wrote it, I know how to fix it. If I install one of Ben Awad's VS Code snippets and it breaks, I have no choice but to wait for him to fix it. And if you are going to rely on your life, your career, your revenue, or your job by putting it in somebody else's hand, don't be surprised when they fuck up and you lose your job, your life, your revenue, or whatever. So you want it in your hands. So write your own code. So I'm going to import that. I'm going to use my snippet to create some state. The first argument is the getter. If I have pieces of state that are going to change together, like, for instance, if you have a login form, the email is worthless without the password. And the password is worthless without the email. And you're probably not going to read just the email by itself and just the password by itself. So having like 7 different use state calls, to me, it's a problem because A, they're asynchronous. So you end up with race conditions where you try to access the email and then you try to access the state or the password in a synchronous fashion. And one of those has not finished setting, and now you have a race condition. So my rule is if they are accessed together, if they change together, put them together. So instead of an email state and a password state, I'm going to have a value state for form values. And it's going to be a JavaScript object that's going to have the email, which will start off as an empty string, and a password, which will start off as an empty string. This means that I will get all of the values together in a synchronous process, because even though overall it's asynchronous because of JavaScript, they are always in the same object that's locked in a transaction synchronously. So I can guarantee they're going to be accessed together. So now if I want to put that into my thing, I can say values dot email. And you can destructure that, but I don't find a big use for it. So now before going further, I'm just going to save it. And now test green, red, green, refactor. We change the error message. Now it's not complaining about this anymore. Now it's complaining that we didn't provide a function for our on-change handler. If you're doing like a medical procedure, like medical diagnoses, like if you watch House or any of those shows, they don't change 5 variables at the same time. Because if they do, they have no idea what worked and what didn't work. If you're doing science and you're doing a science experiment, you don't change 5 variables at the same time, because again, if it works, you don't know why it worked. If it breaks, you don't know why it broke. So my advice, make one change, save your file. Look at the change of the error or the change in the UI, and then take another step. Don't take 5 steps, even though you're like, I'm a rock star programmer, I never make mistakes. I'm a rock star programmer, I fuck everything up all the time. So I put my own rules and regulations on myself to keep myself from doing stupid shit. So I've got this on-change handler, and what I want to do is when people start typing in the field, we're going to get back to that synthetic event that you get in any field that gets a change. And I'm going to call set values. You have to be careful here, because values is not a value, it's an object. And if I was just to do, e.target.value, what's going to happen is, if I'm on the email, the password is going to disappear. If I'm on the password, the email is going to disappear. And that's because this is a value, not an object. So these state hooks come with the ability to get the previous state. So what we want is get the previous state, create a new JavaScript object. Here's your JavaScript object, by the way, this one right here. We're going to set the old JavaScript object to the new JavaScript object, i.e. an immutable change. We're not going to mutate the original one. We're going to replace the original one. And we need the previous values first. So we're going to spread out the previous values. This means that the new JavaScript object is going to have an empty email and an empty password, because that's what's in the old one. But because we're in the input field for the email, now I can do is say the email is going to be e.target.value. We save it, and now we have no errors. So now we should be able to go to our page. We get hello CRA. So let's go to admin/login, and now we have an email. And if we type in here and we look at our components, see, here's an example. You'll see that I have the Redux DevTools. because I do work for companies that unfortunately had idiots that chose their architecture and they chose Redux. So I still have to be able to use it. It's still here. But for me, I don't make those choices. Here's my component tree. And if we look at admin login, we can see the state. Our email is whatever that crazy shit I typed in. And the password is still an empty field. All right. So that brings me to my next step. I could just copy this and paste it. This is what most programmers do. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then they wonder why their technical debt grows and grows and grows. And before they know it, their velocity goes to practically nothing. And the biggest culprit is copying and pasting. But for now, we'll do that and we'll show why it's wrong. So this can't be a text field because it's a password. And you don't want the weird 50-year-old guy in his bathrobe standing behind you at the public library looking at your password. So you're going to change that to password. And now we come back. Now we've got this. We've got a password. The password is there. We can see it's in the state here, but we don't see it because it's masked. This is not where you want to stop. This is where you want to start applying good programming practices, and you abstract out this component. So what we're looking for is we have some sort of an input that takes text, and the text can be a password or it could be regular text. And it's going to have a value, it's going to have an on change, and it's going to have a placeholder. So to me, it seems like we need to have some building blocks. Think of them like Legos. Like when you buy a Lego set, you get a bunch of blocks that are a single color, a single shape. And when you put those together, you can start composing more and more complex stuff from simple primitives. I'm going to use the folder UI. Now, a quick sidestep here. There's this thing called Atomic Design. Atomic Design is from 2013. The thing you have to remember about older ideas is you had to have a genius to figure it out. Okay, so Brad Frost, great fucking smart dude. Not saying anything bad about him at all. He's coming from the perspective of, if I'm a biologist or if I'm a chemical engineer, I already know how to take primitive elements and then you combine them together. You can take hydrogen and oxygen and you combine them in the right way, you get water. Let's have something like that where we can build primitives and then we can compose the primitives together and we can get complex behavior. And he came up with this idea of atomic design. In my opinion, the problem with this is we're not modeling chemical engineering and we're not modeling biology, we're modeling programs. And trying to map atoms onto molecules, onto organisms, onto templates, onto pages, it doesn't really work with today's technology. So I take a simplified version of atomic design where I say, look, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are many, many, many good practices in Judaism and Christianity and maybe even Islam and Hinduism. I don't know too much about those religions, so I can't make a value judgment on them. But I grew up an evangelical and I have a lot of friends in the Jewish community. I can tell you, just because you believe in God or you don't believe in God doesn't mean you have to throw out all of the wisdom in, say, the book of Proverbs or whatever book you pick. There's ancient knowledge that is good. You don't have to believe in crazy unicorns to take the ancient knowledge. You can say, well, maybe they weren't being literal with this part, i.e. atoms, molecules, organisms, templates, and pages, but the concept is good because we do have pages. We're dealing with web pages. So the page paradigm makes sense. Organisms, molecules, atoms, it seems too much like they're trying to map the wrong thing onto the thing they're doing. So I simplify it. UI, that's your atom. I like to think of them as Lego blocks because I was a kid that played with Legos. These are the things that you put together and then you get a feature. So a login, from my perspective, is a feature. Your boss doesn't ask you to ship a component. Your boss asks you to ship features because features they can market and they can sell. Features are customer facing. So if I'm trying to figure out the organization for my application, I would say, okay, well, a feature is a group of primitive components that when you put together, you get something that's usable from the customer perspective. So now I have some folder organization. Notice I still don't have a components folder. And now I have a place for features, admin, login. So we're going to come back over to here and we're going to say, change this to features, admin, login. You take a feature, you build a feature out of UI elements. Then you take that feature and you stick it on a page. In our case, we use a router to stick it on the page. So back to this copy paste job. What I want is I want a single abstraction that can handle this or this. But notice I didn't build the abstraction first. First, I built the thing that you put on the page. Now this acts like a blueprint. It will tell me what my component should be and should not be. I don't have to like pre-design and pre-engineer some perfect solution. I can just say, okay, well, look, I know I need a text input, text field, text area, like you figure out what language works for you. I would say it's a field and it's text, so I'll name it text field.
Yep.
Create my index.jsx. Here's my component. It's a text field. And then look, I could just paste that shit in. My blueprint is now inside of my actual abstraction. So now I have to figure out how do I make it an abstraction. I know it needs a type, and the type can be text, but it could also be password, it could also be email, it could also be number. There's a whole bunch of different types. So I know a prop that I have to pass in as a type. So my first step is to ask myself, what is the most common type? Because there's no reason to type extra code that you don't have to type. So if 90% of my text fields are text, I'm just going to default that to text. Now you can use prop types. You can use TypeScript where you have to like define hard-coded interfaces and types up front, but there's no need for it. JavaScript has it built in that if you want to have a default parameter so that if I don't pass in a type, it'll automatically be a text, I can just give it a default parameter. It also acts as documentation. If I'm looking at this component and I'm like, what is type? Oh, it's text. Oh, okay. And type just gets fed into type through, this is delegation. If you're taking something and you're just passing it through into something else, that's delegation. So I'm just going to pass the type into type. Okay, so now I got value. So I know that my component also needs to have some sort of value. The value is not going to have a default value because we want to have the concept of this text field doesn't have a value yet. So I'm not going to put a default on that. And I'm just going to change this to value. So again, delegation. My component will take a prop called value, and it's just going to pass it down to the primitive HTML element, value equals value. And then we get to this curious thing here, this onChange handler. The onChange is the event. The function inside of it is the handler. I see a lot of people name their handlers the same as the event. That's confusing because you don't know if it's the event or if it's the handler. The other thing is in HTML world, we get back a synthetic event. And if you've ever looked at the synthetic event in like a console.dir or your web development tools, it's a giant fucking object with hundreds of properties. It's really, really long to scroll through. But 99% of the time, we just go e.target.value. So why do I have to leak this abstraction and deal with it's essentially like opening up your engine block and pulling all the parts out. If you don't have to pull apart your engine and pull all those parts out, don't fucking do it because you might not put them back in the right order. So proper encapsulation says, I don't need to expose the internals, i.e. the stuff that's inside of the engine casing, in order to use the thing. I want to make it as simple as possible, which is also known as the principle of least surprise. So rather than doing this where I send back the e.target.value, how about I have an onChange handler that I pass in. It's a prop. There's a case where you might have a text field, but you don't supply an onChange. And if you do that, you'll get an error when somebody types in a field. So I'm going to give this a default value, just like I did with the default value for the type. But I'm going to make it just an empty arrow function. What that means is that when they type in here and I call onChange, it's not going to explode because it does have a function. It's just the function doesn't do anything. So this default value for the parameter is very important. But I don't want to just pass the default. If I call the function without the calling parentheses, I'm not passing the return of the function. I'm passing the function itself. It's one of the greatest things about JavaScript is that there's no difference between data and structure in JavaScript. It's a functional programming technique where I can pass the actual function to another function. I don't have to wrap it in a proc or all the weird shit that you have to do with Python and Ruby. In C, you can't even pass functions to functions. You have to pass function pointers, and then you have to do a function pointer arithmetic. It's just stupid. JavaScript, the dude that designed JavaScript had this in version 1 in 10 days. You can just pass a function to a function. But I want to subclass this function so that I don't pass the E. I want the value. What I want is to actually get what the hell is in that text box. So what I can do is I can turn it into an arrow function. The E comes in through here because it's just part of the HTML spec. We get the synthetic event. We usually shorten the synthetic event to the variable E. I'm going to call the onChange that's passed in. This is called dependency injection. I didn't hard code the onChange into this because if I do that, in order to change the way that the onChange happens, I have to edit this file. What I want to do is be able to change the behavior for this without physically editing the file. That's dependency injection. So I inject the dependency of onChange into it so I can define outside of the text field blueprint what it's going to do when the change actually happens. I don't want to pass back the E. This would be the default of how HTML works. I don't want to do that because then one level up, I have to say e.target.value, e.target.value, e.target.value. So instead, e.target.value here. And oh, look, I need a placeholder. So placeholder. And we don't need to put a default value on that either. Placeholder. This is how you build up components from simplicity that you can then combine together to create complex behavior. There's nothing about this component that's difficult or complex. It's very simple. We delegate in the type, we delegate in the value, we bring in through dependency injection the onChange handler, we do delegation for the placeholder, and we just wrap it all together. Here's how you use it. We come back to here, we say import text field from, let me fix the spelling error. See, here's where the Next.js would be better at this because we wouldn't have to do this. We wouldn't have to say dot slash. Dot slash UI slash text field.
Now this is good stuff. Like, unfortunately, I had like a family dinner coming up soon, so we could finish up with this. But I know it sucks, but listen, I should come on your channel and we could continue doing Next.js versus React, because I think like you're definitely on to point in terms of the benefits of starting with Next.js. And I know we didn't get to see the routing in Next.js, but
we actually already did. I just haven't had to explain it because it's already done.
Right.
Okay, so listen, your onChange handler, we have to send something in, right? Now we get back the value. We don't get back the event. We've encapsulated it to just about what we care about. And now we can just call our set values, but we're not going to do e.target.value. Now here's a cool trick in JavaScript. We can name this value whatever the hell we want. What are we changing? We're changing the name. So we just go straight to the value name. And then I don't even have to give it the value, because if the left-hand side of the property for the object is the same as the variable name, you don't have to do the other side. Now I can just do this. Replace that. This is the last thing I'll do before we're ready. So values.email goes in. Values.password goes in. This becomes enter your password. This one becomes email because we're setting the email value, not the name. We come back to our code. And we got to do the value. Didn't do the value. Value sub password. Looks like Create React app is not auto updating. And look,
there you go.
Inspect, components. Now we got an admin, and now we have these text field components. These did not show up before because they were HTML primitives. Now they're available here. We can see our state here. OnChange, we're passing an OnChange. We're getting back the target.value. Value is the value. Here's our OnChange. We're calling set values, which is going to take the previous value. We're going to print out the previous values. We're going to grab the name. So to debug this, if I put this into a JavaScript expression, you would have to remember to put the return on there if the return matters, but for this, it doesn't matter. And then console.dr value, which is called name. So now I should be able to see what happens
Gotta
if I
console
can
log
spell it
yeah.
like a human. So we go over to console. We can see that what we're typing is going in. We're getting those values
Yep.
back out. The value is coming from the value. Value, values.email, values.password. If we inspect this and we look at the components, it says the value is empty. So the values are not going into the state. E.target.value. Then I would do the same thing here because you got to go one level up to see what's going on. So console.dir, e.target.value. Let's make sure we're actually getting the value. We're getting the values. But something that I've noticed, you notice how that we're not getting the consecutive values, we're just getting a single letter?
Yeah.
That's where our problem lies. The other thing is when you make changes to your code to debug stuff, always undo that thing. Otherwise, you end up building like garbage code on top of garbage code.
Yep.
So I'm going to do the same thing here. It didn't change the output, so I'm going to go back to what I had. Now, my guess is we got an arrow function here, and you've got an arrow function inside. My guess is that this is losing its scope coming inside of here. So let's do a test. Let's create this as a value. And let's say const name equals val. Now we don't have an arrow function inside of an arrow function, so we won't lose that value. And that didn't fix it. Value set values, use state, email, password. So if we were just to say set state, what's that music?
Just from Spotify. There's this called Stream Beats. It's basically music you could use on your streams for free.
Is that Alpha Gaming's thing?
Yeah. It's pretty clever what he did.
Yeah, he's making shitloads of money from that too.
Yeah, he's killing it for sure.
That's another example of how if you have your priorities straight, his priority wasn't to build like some incredible software because he's not a programmer. His idea was generate revenue. He had an idea. He hired a bunch of people to create music that he could give them like money directly from him so that YouTube doesn't copyright strike your thing. He makes so much more money on that than he makes on his regular
that's his big business. Yeah, that's how he makes most of his income.
I'm gonna not be able to do this because you have to get going. And I don't want to.
Yeah, you know what? Like I definitely don't.
I guarantee you that this would work
Right.
out of the box exactly as it is.
Yeah. I think it'll be good to make like a follow-up video for sure. Talking
Just
about
back to the videos so we don't see the infinite screen of death.
yeah. Let me. Where'd you go? Hold on. Yeah, to the right.
And Tech Rally seems to be a vocal guy. I'm willing to have any debate Tech Rally ever wants to have.
Damn it! I'm like I. There you go. Infinite Matrix.
That might be me. 1 second. No, that's me.
No,
that's
that.
See,
Oh, there you go.
that's
There you are. Yeah.
I did it again.
No. Listen, I think Next.js is definitely the future and the way to go. I mean, and I just wanted to kind of not egg you on, but to kind of have a discussion where you could just showcase and show the stuff. But for sure, Next.js, I build all my future projects with Next.js, like my personal projects at work. We're using React. It's just like you said, you have to use Redux and that's why you have Redux Dev
You got
Tool.
to
You're
use
not
what the
happy
guy
about
who
it.
writes your paychecks wants you to use.
Right. Right, exactly. And so like my argument was in the sense that I totally get it from your standpoint of learning, but I'm saying in terms of people doing work, a lot of companies, they're still using Create React App and they're still using all this other stuff and
Yeah, but
adding
here's the
to
other
it.
side of that coin. Their apps are now insecure and they don't have server-side rendering, which means they don't have SEO, which means you're dead in the
Right.
water. So they need somebody to come into their organization and say, do you know that you're leaking your server keys? Do you know that you don't have good SEO? Do you know that you don't have a good mobile experience because you're using Create React App? And then
Yeah.
that person, that CEO who cares about his revenue and his bottom line is going to be like, we got to hire Paul. All these other idiots told me to use Create React App, and Paul came
Right.
in and said,
To-
look, Create React App is fine, but do you realize that you have all these
Listen,
problems now? And he's going to be
to
like,
be fair,
nobody ever told
it's
me
all
I was ugly.
dashboards. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
dashboards though, but it's still like no.
So you're saying SEO doesn't matter because it's all internal.
Right? Yeah, SEO doesn't matter. All that. It's yeah, exactly. It's all internal
But
stuff. They
user
don't want it
experience
to-
matters, and who wants to
Right.
load a blank page with 500 spinners?
Yeah, that's true too. No, Next.js is definitely the future, and I think like the argument that you're saying how Create React App is just a tool. It's like part of like it's like a library that's not complete. You can't go and easily have a complete production application unless you add routing yourself, unless you add all this other stuff on top of it. And that's a headache where Next.js is a lot more complete in that sense. And I think if someone's
And
building
The
website,
Facebook
go
team
from there.
doesn't try to present Create React App as a production ready. They say right in
Yeah.
the documentation, Create
Oh,
React
no,
App
yeah,
is your first
100%.
step for prototyping React projects and for learning React.
Yeah, but I think like, you know, from the standpoint and like, I mean, you went, actually, by the way, I like how you broke it down, how you went through this idea of like writing the stuff and then, okay, seeing the need that we have to create a separate component for input so we don't have to repeat ourselves. I like the way you go through it because a lot of people, they jump into creating components first, even when there's no need for it. You know what I mean? So I like that example and definitely would love to continue to stream. Always like appreciate it. But the bottom point is I know like a lot of people be like, oh, look, DevMentorLive and Paul, they got into like a debate and like what at the end of the day, the whole point of the debate is for people to see, you know, the reason why, because there's so many people out there that are learning things and they're doing things, but they don't know the other side of the coin. And like I like the fact that we were able to showcase that. I wish we had more time and be awesome to do another stream and talk about that, because at the end of the day, if you want to be a good developer, you need to be able to make an argument on both sides. And that's kind of like the whole idea I was trying to say. I wish we had more time to talk about using React Router that's not part of React. I mean, you have to install it separately, and the routing in Next.js is already built in, and it's way better in Next.js as a developer to work with. The way it's, you know, implemented. And so I think like knowing React, Create React App, knowing the reasons why it's not the best, and knowing Next.js and knowing why it's better.
You gotta box stuff into context. Create React App is amazing for prototyping.
Right.
It's a great tool for prototyping. It's a great tool to have a sandbox environment for you to experiment with just learning React. It's not a production React app.
But, and also to your point, like I know we spent most of the time in Create React App, but what it comes down to, like writing good JavaScript and following proper React, you know, structure, because everything you wrote there is applicable in Next.js. And that was kind of like your argument that you can learn React within the context of, you know, Next.js and not having to do, you know, Create React App.
And everything that I wrote there is also good JavaScript.
Right, that was the whole point. And so like the takeaway from this, like what I would say to people is not so much like oh, React or Next.js, is this idea of like become a good programmer, understand how to write good JavaScript, and more importantly, know the difference so you could explain, like you were saying, like if you don't like a technology, don't say the technology sucks. Explain to an interviewee why what are its shortcomings and what you would do different, because that way people will see the breadth of your knowledge. And so like that was like really awesome and really great. And I wish we had like more time, because by the way, guys, go check out DevMentorLive's channel.
In my experience, you have to be on the wrong side of the argument first to be on the right side of the argument later for the right reasons. And my own behavior patterns is classic. I've always been an argumentative guy, even when I didn't have a fucking clue what I was talking about when I was young. But I held strong opinions loosely, meaning that I would advocate very seriously about the thing that I was trying to advocate for. But I am easily swayed by good evidence, which is why I wanted to switch to actual some real code. Because if you stick to an idea, or you stick to an argument, or you stick to a side, Red Sox versus White Sox, but it's purely emotional and egotistical, you will find that you're still on the wrong side in 3 years. Whereas if you start off on the wrong side, but you can learn from trying to make an argument on why your position is better, only to realize that you're actually realizing your position is not the better position. When you get to the quote unquote right side of the position, you get there from an educated point backed with evidence, which is always better than just stumbling on the right side. Imagine this. Imagine you're a stock trader. And on your first day, you make all of the wrong choices for your stock trade. But it turns out to be a winner and you make a bunch of money. That's actually the worst education you can get. Because what it tells you is when you get to a minefield, you just close your eyes and you walk through. And that's the way to deal with a minefield. And it's not true. That'll work 1 or 2 times and then you're going to explode.
Yeah, and by the way, like, listen, I worked with you and you helped me with Next.js. Like, I totally know Next.js. I kind of knew where you're going to take it. But the point is, what I wanted to say is that by you making your case and by me, like, I'm stubborn just like that and I'm easily swayed. Like, if someone shows me the reason why, the reason why, I'll be like, of course, because you just laid it out there. And that's something that I'm glad we were able to do on this live stream, because it's how people learn and improve. And like, I mean, to me, it's all code. It's all awesome. And I think like Next.js is awesome. But it's funny how some people like, oh, look, they're arguing. Technology. They're fighting.
Until I don't like a technology. And I find that I can still respect a technology, even if I don't want to use it and I don't like it. Like, I can respect Java for what it did to the world, or did for the world, even if I don't want to write Java and I don't like Java. And I can appreciate what C# did for the world, even though it was really just an attempt of Microsoft to embrace and extend and crush Java with C#, because I learned things from C#, like event delegation and some other things. And I would never want to write production code in C, but the fact that I had to start writing stuff in C was a very, very valuable tool. So I might think PHP is garbage, but you know what? PHP got us to where we are right now with the internet. And if we didn't have that, we would definitely be back in the Stone Ages of the internet. So you can use a technology and go from being a fan of the technology to being unsure, and then going from unsure to saying you don't like the technology, all based on evidence. And then in the end, still appreciate what the technology did to get you from A to B, so you don't need it anymore. And you could take that same approach with people.
So the takeaway that I would take from here, number one, be language agnostic and appreciate that there's other stuff out there. Number two,
don't judge people by their language of choice.
And don't make assumption if you don't know the other side of the coin. And this was like a great example to be like, hey, Paul, the reason why I'm saying this is because blah, 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 blah. And then like, but I also want to show you from your point of view why blah, 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 blah. And that way people see, you know, both cases. And I think like the goal for everybody who's learning to program is to get to that point where if they're arguing for one side of a technology, they're doing it from the standpoint because they have the other side information and knowledge, and they're able to show it and talk about it. I think that's a sign of like a true programmer who really respects the craft and wants to continue growing their knowledge. And I mean, to me, it's awesome. I always like what you're doing, even though, like, you know, some people be like, Mark has strong opinions. Like, you know, it doesn't matter because,
Yeah, I do.
and that's you know, it is what
You
it
know,
is.
I will caveat that too. I'm full of caveats. I know this, but here's the other thing. If you talk to a senior programmer and they think they have nothing to learn from the junior programmers, don't listen to that fucking senior programmer.
Right, 100%.
Because junior programmers have just as much to teach the old programmers as the old programmers have to teach the junior programmers. I like to use the vampire parody because I read a lot of Anne Rice as a youth. Old vampires, because they don't ever die, they get stuck in the past and they can't deal with the new world because the new world changes, which sounds a lot like programming. As soon as you get comfortable with JavaScript, you got to learn 20,000 other things, right? And the only way that you can really get connected to these new things is to get connected through the perspective of the people that don't know the old stuff. They only know the new stuff. So what brought me around on MongoDB, for instance, I was an avid fuck you Mongo guy because MongoDB is a schemaless database. We've had schemaless databases since the 1960s. Schemas were invented as a solution to the problems that schemaless databases solved. So my first assumption and opinion was that the people that invented MongoDB must be idiots because they don't know their history. If they knew their history, they would know the reason why we have schemas. Then I did some contract work at Uber. And Uber got rid of over 1,000 Postgres databases that they had trouble with, like network syncing and slow inter-network joins and queries. They replaced it with 10 MongoDB databases. 1,000 Postgres databases with 10 MongoDB databases. But what they did is they put the right kind of data on the Mongo databases and they put the right kind of data on the Postgres databases.
Yep.
They didn't go for one solution fits all.
For the other,
They used the right tool for the job it need. And it was a guy that was literally 24 that turned me around on Mongo databases. And now I love MongoDB.
Yeah.
But you got to use it for the right job. If you're trying to do
you got to write the
information
right
in
tool
Mongo,
for the job.
you're going to fucking hate life. And the people that you're writing the statistics for are going to hate life. If you need statistical data, you need Postgres or you need something like Cassandra.
Yeah,
Cassandra.
I think for developers, they should definitely be familiar with Mongo and Postgres, or that, like, for sure.
But my
I
main
use
point
both.
was senior developers have as much to learn from junior developers and mid-level developers as junior and mid-level developers have to learn from senior programmers. And if you disagree with that, you're wrong. Yes, I have strong opinions.
I was gonna say, by the way, like, the one skill that I have that maybe I take for granted because I've just always been like this. Like, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, you could always learn a lot from the other person. And so make sure you have the ability to listen and just give time, because, like, that's how I get ahead. It's like I listen. And that's the most amazing thing. But a lot of people have opinions, and if you're just blinded by someone's opinion point of view and you dismiss that person, you might miss out on learning some of these gems that are going to help you, like, move forward. So,
well, you might also
definitely have to
disagree
do
with
more
somebody
stuff
today, and then in a week's time go, holy Christ, they were right.
They were right. Yeah, they were right. No, totally. Listen, I really appreciate your time. Sorry I didn't have more time. And anytime you want to do this again, if you want to do one on your channel, my channel, it doesn't matter. By the way, if you had a lot of great comments, Jose, like, so far, this is one of the best.
Thank some of these people. Adrian, thank you for joining. Alex, Tevez, Dennis, of course. Always fun to have a rock star on the channel. Jose Fun, Mirai, everybody here, Hologram, KG, Tech Rally. I love the fact that Tech Rally will speak up and say stuff, whether I like it or not, like whether I agree with it personally or not. I love hearing his point of view. Everybody that joined the stream, Jordan Foster, Ivan, or Yvonne, however you say it. Everybody, thank you so much for coming onto this thing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I met Paul, 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
Yeah, it was a while ago. And you helped me out with a lot of stuff. I really appreciate, the knowledge that you have. And the thing is, it's like, if you're in this field,
surround yourself with good people.
100%.
You don't always have to agree with somebody for them to be a good person. But good people that you can count on to be honest with you are always better than rock star, rich, famous, beautiful people that you can't count on.
Yeah, and this is like funny. Like I appreciate like the back and forth because at the end of the day, like I know where like at the end of the day everybody's gonna learn something, and this was like an amazing stream. Had like so much fun, and I should have been more prepared. I should have had some Jameson myself. It would have been nice next time.
If you guys are interested in whiskeys, Jameson is the best budget Irish whiskey on the market. Bullet. It looks like Bullet, but it's actually Bullet. It's a very cheap bourbon in the United States. Absolutely excellent taste. Stay away from Johnny Walker. It's garbage.
I think I asked you this. Do you drink tequila?
I try not to.
Yeah.
I think
What's
it's
a good tequila
my
over there?
Cherokee and Choctaw native blood that comes out. Whiskey doesn't affect me horribly, but tequila, I always end up with a hangover, and I'm more likely to get in a fight on tequila than anything else. Tequila, Maya
What's a good
Orozco
tequila in Mexico?
an excellent tequila. Any of your commercial tequilas like Jose Cuervo, they're absolute garbage.
What do you think of Don Julio?
It's overpriced.
Yeah.
Do a search for Maya Orozco. I don't know if you guys can get it where you're at, but
Yeah.
it is. I like the cheap alcohols that have the quality of the expensive alcohols rather than the expensive alcohols that have the quality of the cheap alcohols.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
And my favorite Japanese whiskey, I can't find it in Puerto Vallarta, so I don't have it. Centauri. Yeah.
Centauri, yeah.
Centauri whiskey is absolutely dreamy from like a there goes the infinite fucking Inception thing. It has absolutely amazing taste. It's like 600 pesos, so I guess that'd be like $30.
Yeah.
But again, drink in moderation. Don't drink until after your work is. That anyway, manager that swears that he can drink while he's doing sales calls and stuff. Don't believe him.
No way. Yeah, it's all nonsense. Anyway, thanks to everybody. I always appreciate all of you guys. You guys, thank you. Take care, guys.